I'd like to call this regular council meeting to order. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge that the land upon which we are located here at the council and in our various locations throughout the town is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to reside in our community and in this area and add to the richness and diversity not only of Fort Erie but of Niagara. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
Thank you. A few very brief announcements. I'm going to run down these fairly quickly because we have a heavy agenda, and we've just completed a closed session meeting, which is the reason for our delayed start of this regular council meeting. Just wanted to point out that the COVID numbers in Fort Erie have stabilized. They're now averaging about 1, sometimes 2 a day over the past week or so. So that's very good news. And compared to the other municipalities in Niagara, we're back to where we typically are. All of you would have heard that there's been some changes at the border with respect to crossing the border by Canadians. If you're a Canadian or a resident in Canada, permanent resident, you can cross without having to have a test, PCR test, as long as your stay is not longer than 72 hours. There are some further changes that I'm sure the federal government will be implementing. I make reference to this because we have 2 items on our agenda this evening. One is a resolution from the City of Niagara Falls. One is a motion that has been put forward by Councillor Dubanow. I believe each of those are going to be deferred to December the 13th, but we'll know that when we get to those items. On a really happy note, I wanted to compliment the the Bridgeburg BIA for the wonderful Santa Claus parade that they held. Those individuals did a tremendous job. It's the first time that the BIA has taken over that responsibility for some time, and they did an excellent job. This year's event was after dark, so all the floats were lit up, and it was really quite impressive. And I particularly want to thank Mike Pazinski and Bill's Toyota for, again, providing us with a truck and the opportunity to drive through that part of the town and wave to the crowd, and my wife and I thoroughly enjoyed that. The fourth thing I wanted to make reference to, and Regional Councillor Insina may make reference to it during his remarks, is that this Thursday, Regional Council will be deliberating on the regional transit, and that is to take place at a meeting on November the 25th starting at 3 o'clock. We've been getting a lot of emails with respect to that, and suffice to say this is a big issue for the region and Fort Erie and the other municipalities in Niagara. I happen to notice that some site work has started at the site of the new Gilmore Lodge, and haven't seen how much progress they're making, but I know that that is moving forward. And this Thursday as well, the Hospice Niagara will be making an announcement with respect to the project, and I think their fundraising efforts. That is a new facility that will go adjacent to the new Gilmore Lodge, so that's very good news for the town of Fort Erie. On Friday and Saturday, December the 3rd and 4th, Ridgeway BIA will be holding its Spirit of Christmas, and it will be not completely back to normal, but as close to normal, I guess, as they can get. And I know that there have been events taking place in the other business improvement areas over the last month or so that have been getting people back into a position where they can at least see each other and commiserate and enjoy themselves. On Saturday, December the 5th, if you were in the parade, which I was, as I just mentioned, and you crossed the Central Avenue Bridge, or if you weren't in the parade and you crossed the Central Avenue Bridge on Saturday evening, you would have seen this magnificent show of lights, Christmas lights on Bowden Street. And they've been doing this now. They did it last year, and I think they had started this a little while before that, but last year was kind of a formal event. This is the 2nd annual Bowden Street Holiday Party on December the 5th from 4 to 7 p.m. They're inviting people to come out, enjoy the lights on that street, visit with Santa. There's going to be a train ride, refreshments, children's crafts will be provided. They would like individuals to come out and that is at the Bethel Pentecostal Church. Bring an unwrapped toy for the gift of love and or a non-perishable food item for a local charity. So that's December the 5th, Saturday, 4 to 7 p.m. on Bowden Street. I wanted to mention as well that on Thursday, November the 25th, the Chamber of Commerce is continuing its Fall Mayor's Update series, and the town of Fort Erie, will be highlighted on this Thursday coming at 10 a.m. And those are this evening's announcements. There is one addendum, and that is an additional delegation this evening, Bridget Lozier, with respect to the sale of limited marketability land referred to in PDS 101 for 2021. And there has been a correction with respect to that particular report to provide an accurate Appendix 2. So when we get to the delegations, Delegation E will be Bridget Lozier. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I have one this evening. It's consent agenda item number 9.22B. That's to receive the SPCA Board of Director minutes from October 22nd and November 10th, as the company I work for performs contracted services for the Fort Erie SPCA.
Thank you. Just let me mark that. So when we get there. Okay, any other declarations of pecuniary interest? I don't see any. Notice of upcoming public meetings. We've had our first budget in committee meeting. The second meeting will take place Wednesday, December the 8th, 2021. That is when we'll deal with the water and wastewater operating budget and fee analysis. The third meeting will take place on February the 2nd, 2022. That's the library assessment, analysis, and general levy operating budget. If there's a fourth meeting necessary, it will be held on February the 9th, 2022. In terms of the bylaws with respect to all of these, those meetings will take place at 6 p.m. They're all via video teleconference. People can access them in that fashion. The bylaws for the preliminary capital budget will be presented on December the 13th. For the water and wastewater budget will be presented January the 17th, 2022. And for the general levy budget and general capital budget, February the 28th, 2022, all things being equal. There is a proposed zoning bylaw amendment public meeting with respect to 323 Central Avenue, which will take place during the council meeting on December the 6th, 2021. That starts at 6 p.m. And the information report for that public meeting will be available December the 1st, 2021 on the website. There's also a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment public meeting with respect to 1107 Garrison Road, same day, December the 6th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And the information report will be available on December the 1st, 2021 on our website. That takes us to the Regional Council report. Good evening, Councillor Encina.
Good evening, Mayor Redekop, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I would also like to thank the Bridgeburg BIA for allowing myself, along with Councillor McDermott and Dubanow, to walk in the parade. Unfortunately, we didn't get a hold of a vehicle with, and apparently the mayor's vehicle didn't have room for us, but that's okay. Maybe next year.
No comment.
A lot of the points I was going to talk about, and I understand you do have a heavy agenda tonight. The mayor spoke about Gilmore Lodge. Yes, construction is underway. And again, after the countless meetings, the phone calls, the emails with region staff and delegations from the province, it's finally underway. So now, now that it's on its way, I think the best thing that I'm going to do in the very near future is take this issue with the excess lands to Niagara Regional Housing and Regional Planning staff to say, okay, we started with the Gilmore Lodge. What are we going to do with the rest of it? And I'm pushing, and we'll hope for a mix of not only residential apartments but also commercial. in line with what the town has in its plan. As many know, water and wastewater budgets were set at the region last week. The rates were set and approved. The increase for 2022 for water and wastewater, I'm sorry, is 5.15%. And waste management is also going to be set at 5.54%. That will come again for bylaws as it goes through. Excuse me. The Niagara Region is funding the expansion of a shelter diversion program with the funding of 2 additional emergency shelters. So if people find themselves in need of an emergency shelter for whatever reason, they are connected with a diversion worker. The diversion worker sits down with that person and learns about their current housing situation and their immediate requirements. So in hopes of identifying an alternative housing arrangement. This assistance is given to those who have been presenting recently to the shelter during the pilot project. The project has been successful. 88% of the youth that have presented have been successfully diverted and kept out of the shelters. The program is also successful when it comes to adults. Approximately 85% are diverted into different avenues other than being in the shelter. One troubling fact that we're seeing now is that during the past several months, the demand for shelter space has increased. Many of those who have been misplaced are being misplaced from their homes. I also would like councillors to know that at this point, the provincial rent freeze is set to expire in January of 2022. So it's anticipated things are not going to may get a bit hairier for their local residents. So what I'm asking is that, if anyone needs assistance, or if you hear of anyone, they can call that magic number of 211 for assistance. It goes up to Port Cares, and they can seek assistance that way. Because statistically, and what we're seeing is that it's going to increase, and it's not going to get any better for the short term. Mayor Redekop, I will leave it at that. If anyone has any questions, through you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Regional Councillor Encina. Thank you very much. I just, with regard to the Gilmore Lodge property, of course, being located in Ward 2, I know you're going to keep us in the loop, but certainly anything that I can do as a councillor and, working through that, certainly I hope you'll reach out. I'm looking forward to seeing that happen, not only the short-term care, or the the long-term care center that's located there, but also the surrounding development. And I just, one last thing, Your Worship, I just want to also extend my appreciation to Councillor Encina during the Santa Claus parade. It was a pleasure to walk with you and George, Councillor McDermott. And thank you very much for not only helping me put the Christmas lights on my car, but taking them off at the end of the night. That was quite the walk, and I do appreciate your help. And thank you very much, Councillor Encina. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Any other questions of the regional councillor? And Councillor Dubanow, we will keep you up to date as well as other members of council. Councillor Encina and I did have a meeting with staff regarding the Old County Fair Mall property, I guess maybe 2 months ago, to talk about some of the potential for that property. If there are no other questions by members of council, thank you very much, Regional Councillor Encina. That then takes us to presentations and delegations, and the first is going to be Tamara Coleman-Laurie, the Director of Strategic Impact for United Way Niagara, and Aaron Rising, Program Coordinator for Niagara Community Garden Network. Good evening, ladies. I see one of you. Here comes the other one.
Took a moment to get in.
There we go. Good
Good
evening.
evening, Mayor. Yes. Good evening, Mayor Redekop, council members, and staff. My name is Tamara Comalori, and I'm here on behalf of Frances Hallworth. I'm the Director of Impact at United Way Niagara, and my co-presenter, Erin Rising, the Program Manager of the Niagara Community Garden Network, joins me here today. Thank you for hosting us to present about community gardens. This summer, we sent representatives at each of Niagara's municipalities a published position statement. The statement focuses on increasing barrier-free access to food security through community gardens and identifies the role of Niagara Region municipalities in advancing policy and reducing barriers. This position statement was endorsed by the Niagara Food Security Network, the Niagara Poverty Reduction Network, and the Niagara Region Public Health and Emergency Services. And today we're here to follow up on that statement. For decades, United Way Niagara has been investing in a myriad of food security solutions. Our focus areas include funding a broad range of food programs, facilitating the food security network composed of more than 100 individuals and community organizations. In Fort Erie, we work with Feeding Fort Erie, Strong Fort Erie Neighborhoods, the Salvation Army, and many other agencies and local faith involved in food and meal programs. And most recently, United Way has become the home for the Niagara Community Garden Network, funding the delivery of the Community Garden Network, their programs, and advocacy work. We at United Way firmly believe that community gardens represent one of the long-term sustainable solutions to food security in our community. And I would like to invite my colleague, Erin from United Way, to share with you how and why.
Thank you, Tamara, and thank you to you all for hosting us tonight to talk about community gardens in Fort Erie. I coordinate the Niagara Community Garden Network, which is a collaborative network of food security leaders and residents working together to build thriving community gardens. Our mandate is to provide our communities access to affordable, healthy food and the resources to grow their skills and engage their community through gardening. We believe everyone deserves to easily access nutritious and healthy, affordable food. Collectively, we have over 40 organizations and groups offering more than 1,200 garden plots to individuals, families, and organizations across Niagara. In our gardens, we see that growing and sharing food can transform communities and address a broad range of environmental, social, and health issues. Community gardens are essentially land that's gardened collectively by groups of people on either private or public land. Gardeners grow a variety of vegetables, herbs, fruit, and flowers in individually managed or shared plots, often with common goals such as community building, beautifying neighborhoods, improving food security, or as educational or therapeutic resources. Because food and food systems are central to so many aspects of community life, health, the environment, the economy, culture, a growing number of local governments in Canada have identified community gardens as a way to help them create healthier, sustainable, and more resilient communities. Here's how. Community gardens promote healthy and inclusive neighborhoods. They support overall physical and mental well-being. They offer unique opportunities for education and skill development. They provide economic relief to gardeners. They build improved social connectedness, community, and sense of purpose. They offer environmental benefits such as to decrease greenhouse gas emissions, raise environmental awareness, and lead to waste reduction. And overall, improve nutrition and food security with better access to healthy, affordable, and locally grown food, which is especially important in low-income neighborhoods with poor access to healthy fruits and vegetables. Food security is a basic human right, yet almost 60,000 people in Niagara are food insecure, experiencing limited access to nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. Community gardens act as a promising strategy to decrease food insecurity because of their ability to provide access to nutritious food, often serving our most marginalized and vulnerable populations in Niagara. The importance of these impacts are especially important in times of uncertainty, such as during this pandemic. Along with climate change and the rising cost of food, community gardens are an effective part of a range of strategies to build greater resilience and stability in our communities. A community garden that is led by the community it serves and supported by local government is more likely to meet its unique needs and be successful in the long term. Local governments play a supportive and enabling role as part of a range of strategies. This requires collaborative partnerships between local governments, residents, and community groups. Our Niagara Community Garden Network is a mutual support network, and we provide ongoing support to residents, volunteers, and community garden coordinators. We facilitate this group to come together on a regular basis to collaborate, share our resources, and learn from and support one another. Together, we're stronger and can better achieve our goals to build stronger communities, promote food security, reduce the effects of poverty, and expand our collective impact. We partner with Niagara Region Public Health and Niagara Regional Housing to advance food security and access. We believe that by working across sectors, we can create significant change for vulnerable people and strengthen our food security system. Local government policies can indicate a range of commitments to community gardens, from high-level resolutions that support gardens in principle to specific policies which designate land for gardens and allocate resources for gardens. Community gardens can be integrated into many types of planning processes, including land use bylaws, park master plans, healthy living strategies, sustainability resolutions, climate action strategies, and neighborhood plans. Currently, many of Niagara's municipalities do not have written community garden policies. Local governments do have a significant role to play in the process by removing policy barriers, enacting supportive policies, providing support related to water access, land tenure, and composting, by signaling their support of gardens in government communications, and by dedicating staff time to interact with community gardening groups. Niagara's municipalities can create policies that empower citizens and provide them with barrier-free access to food through community gardens. The best practices and policies we encourage and recommend Niagara municipalities to develop specifically relate to land use and access. Community gardens require suitable spaces that are publicly accessible with access to water and on transportation routes. We recommend waiving or reducing fees imposed by the municipality or providing a stipend as a result of the fees imposed for things such as water. We recommend entering into a land use agreement with municipalities. Often there are considerations around liability, which can sometimes be a barrier for resident-led initiatives. Many local governments are now covering gardens under their own park department insurance. So an example of this is the City of St. Catharines, along with numerous other municipalities in Ontario, have recently moved to include coverage for community gardens and public spaces. Municipalities can support gardens through allocating funding in their annual budget for capital expenses related to the establishment of new gardens and supporting existing gardens. And we've included in our slide deck the City of St. Catharines' sample annual investment. We seek to establish a close working relationship with municipal staff to effectively support residents in these projects and for ongoing evaluation and development of resources. This is an opportunity for Niagara to come together to advance food security and food justice through community gardens. The Niagara Community Garden Network and United Way Niagara, in partnership with the Niagara Food Security Network, would be delighted to provide support and work with staff to transition to inclusive and barrier-free approaches. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Coleman-Laurie and Ms. Rising. Are there any members of council that have any questions? I don't see any. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to our next presentation, Marcy Jacqueline and Liz Benayan, Biodiversity and Climate Action Committee in Niagara. Good evening, Liz.
Good evening. Hi. Shall we get started?
You may proceed.
Okay. So we've known for decades that wetlands and woodlands provide free services to humans, but I recently read a short article about natural assets, and so I spoke to Liz Benayan, and she kindly offered to share her expertise on this topic with us.
So good evening, Mayor and Councillors. Thank you for allowing me to make this presentation. And if you just give me 1 second, I will open it up. So I'm here to talk about the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative, and it's basically assessing the value of our green infrastructure. And as you heard, it's myself and Marcy, who I'm sure you know very well, and this is just a little bit more about us. You can see it in your copy of the package. So municipalities, as you know, are already well versed in asset management. You're continuously inventorying and assessing your community's existing infrastructure, such as roads, stormwater systems, etc. And you determine the current state of those assets and prepare and implement plans to maintain or replace those assets as necessary, allowing the municipality to make informed decisions on service provision and budgeting for capital expenses. Unfortunately, local governments often lack the way to measure one set of these assets, which are natural assets. So natural assets are ecosystem features that provide or could be restored to provide services just like the engineered assets, but historically have not been considered on equal footing or included in asset management plans. So there's basically three types of natural assets, or otherwise known as green infrastructure. The first set are things like wetlands, forests, parks, lakes, rivers, creeks, fields, and soil. The second category is created natural assets, things like rain gardens or bioswales, urban trees, urban parks, or stormwater management ponds. And then you have the engineered green assets, things like permeable pavement, green roofs, rain barrels, green walls, and cisterns. So the key benefits of natural assets, there's three main benefits. First, natural assets reduce service delivery costs, and managing areas such as aquifers, forests, and wetlands reduces service delivery costs and improves the efficiency of engineered assets. Natural assets have a perpetual lifespan. Engineered assets must be replaced after their lifespan ends. Some natural assets, on the other hand, can provide services in perpetuity. They can become more valuable over time with effective monitoring, maintenance, and restoration. And some natural assets are resilient and can meet increased service delivery requirements under situations such as climate change. Natural assets are evaluated based on three different things. First, biophysical and ecological assessment. What is the total ecosystem services they provide, such as stormwater management, erosion control, climate mitigation, as well as the value of their ecological services, such as providing habitat. They're also evaluated on economic and the financial. How do they perform compared to the cost of the same services provided by gray infrastructure, both upfront and over time? And as well, the social and cultural assessment is done. What recreational and social benefits do they provide to citizens? So until now, there's been no standardized way to measure natural assets. The Municipal Natural Assets Initiative was created to address this. It has worked with nearly 100 communities to explore nature's ability to provide municipal services as a long-term, cost-effective, and climate-resilient solution to aging infrastructure. The MNAI team provides scientific, economic, and municipal expertise to support and guide local governments in identifying, valuing, and accounting for natural assets in their financial planning and asset management programs, and in developing leading-edge, sustainable, and climate-resilient infrastructure. MNAI's mission is to make natural asset management a mainstream practice across Canada, and in support of this, for local governments to accept and use the methodologies and tools in a standard ways across the country. So there's many case studies. If you go to the website that I'm going to provide you with in a minute, there's many case studies there, but here's just a couple of them. So Oshawa, they examined natural assets along the southernmost highly urbanized 7-kilometer segment of the Oshawa Creek. And the findings included that natural assets along the segment of the creek provided a stormwater management value of $18.9 million. And when including the full Oshawa Creek watershed and the surrounding floodplain, this increased to between $392 million and $414 million. The comparison of natural assets to engineered assets under future land use and climatic conditions concluded that replacing the natural assets with an engineered asset would reduce the ability to retain water, leading to the potential for more flooding. This project identified preventative measures for the City of Oshawa to take to improve the function of natural assets, to further protect against and prevent erosion in city-owned riparian lands, mitigate the negative impacts of urbanization, and avoid having to build additional engineered assets. The region of Peel assessed the stormwater quality and quantity services provided by wetlands, forests, and meadows in 2 subwatersheds. They found that all wetlands and forests and meadows assessed mitigated a 100-year flood, and all except the riverine wetlands exceed the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change's requirements for water quality. The replacement value of the stormwater services provided by these ecosystems in the 2 subwatersheds was estimated at roughly $704 million under current conditions and $764 million under climate change conditions. The overall conclusion was the difference in the value under existing and climate change scenarios demonstrated the ever-increasing importance of natural assets in providing critical services to municipalities in the future, and their important role in increasing resilience and reducing pressures on municipal infrastructure from climate change impacts. And finally, a study in Oakville where they assessed the stormwater services being provided by the Maplehurst Remnant Channel, a 240-meter section of the stream located in older parts of the town, which was undergoing significant redevelopment. The results demonstrated that the channel is providing equivalent storm services to an engineered asset that would cost between $1.24 and $1.44 million to replace. The overall conclusion was the project demonstrated that the natural asset provides equivalent stormwater services compared to engineered alternatives and supports further investigation into the other remnant channels in the town. The knowledge gained through the pilot was transferred across departments and also used for the public to convey the importance of municipal natural assets, the wide variety of services they can deliver, and how they can be integrated into supportive policy and on-the-ground work. So in conclusion, natural assets are an important part of a municipality's infrastructure and need to be valued and managed like built assets. Natural assets can be less costly and more robust than built infrastructure, especially when managing the impacts of climate change. And understanding how these assets work and their value is important when making planning decisions. A standardized evaluation system now exists, and more municipalities are employing it. And the place that you can go for more information on the MNAI initiative is here. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Benyon and Ms. Jacqueline. Is it Benyon? Is that how your last name is pronounced?
Perfect.
Thank you. Very interesting. Are there any members of council that have any questions of Ms. Benyon or Ms. Jacqueline? And I can't, as long as that screen is shared. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop, and Liz and Jackie, thank you very much for, or Marcy rather, thank you very much for coming. Have you had the opportunity to go through Fort Erie and identify any potential or existing natural assets that we should be looking at or be concerned about?
Marcy, I have to leave this to you. As you know, Fort Erie is better than I do.
No, I haven't got that far. And it really requires a professional judgment. Because some of the areas may need rehabilitation or restoration at this point, but certainly there's a lot of potential.
I could add that one of the interesting things to know is that Ontario created a regulation that was put into effect in 2018, which is 588/17. And Ontario became the first province to require municipalities to have an asset management plan. And in their definition of core assets, they included green infrastructure. So it is becoming necessary for municipalities to start valuing their green infrastructure assets. And, as I mentioned in the presentation, up until now, there's been no standardized way to do that. But that does now exist. So hopefully we'll see more municipalities using the tools to evaluate their natural assets the way they do their gray infrastructure.
Councillor Lubberts, anything further?
Yeah, just one more question. Now, I'm assuming that if they come in and do an assessment, that there'd be a cost to that, or is that done free of charge, or how does that work? The assessment itself.
So I'm sure that there is a cost to it because it requires very specialized people to do the assessments. But I'm not associated with that group, and so I couldn't tell you what the cost might be. But other municipalities have engaged in the process, so that they'd certainly be, I'm sure, willing to share with you how it went for them. They've been doing this work since 2015-16 was the first cohort project that they did. They had 5 municipalities across the country engaging in a municipal asset management initiative. And then they did another one with 6 municipalities across the country a few years later. So they have been working on it for quite a while. And as I mentioned, you can find out more information through the website I provided.
Councillor Lubberts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other members of council? Ms. Benyon, so in terms of the assessment itself, it looks like in the city of Oakville, as an example, they did a scoped assessment related to a specific area. So presumably that's something that could be done. I suppose ideally it would be the whole municipality, but you could do portions of the municipality, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. They can look at the different examples I gave you. It was, from watersheds to basically a little remnant channel. So they can certainly scope to whatever the municipality requires.
Thank you. And are there any municipalities in Niagara that have taken on this initiative to date?
Not as far as I know, although I heard that the region was looking at it, and I also heard that the NPCA was talking about it, but as far as I know, no. But that doesn't mean there haven't been municipalities who have. I just don't know about them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's very helpful information and something that will be, particularly for Fort Erie, it's particularly important for us to, I think, get a handle on the value of our natural heritage. Thank you, ladies.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Good night.
The next delegation then is William Hine with respect to Church on the Beach. Good evening, Mr. Hine.
Thank you for allowing me to come and to speak.
Not at all. Please proceed.
Okay. The last time I was here was in 2017, and we made a presentation at that time. We're actually making our presentation for 2022. The reason we make it early is that we have to connect with the various pastors and musicians to come forward, and they can put on their schedule for 2022 to come either to preach at Church on the Beach or be one of the musicians for 2022. I previously met with Dan Turner in early of November. And I sent him a letter, which is on the PowerPoint, rather than read it, the only real difference this year is that we were asking for a flat fee of $5,000 due to the anticipated decrease in attendance numbers. The main reason we have not had a service in the last 2 years because of COVID. We have submitted a application for the corporation of the town of Fort Erie. And it's been the same since we first started in 2011. Who helps us at Church on the Beach? We're in partnership with WDCX Radio, which is in Western New York. However, their main listeners are in Southern Ontario and in Toronto. We also are sponsored by Kingdom Bound Ministries. We have resource partners with South Niagara Life Ministries, which is in Fort Erie, and also the Teacher's Desk, which is also supplies, school supplies throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario. And I'll talk a little bit about them just a little bit later in the PowerPoint. You know, after our services are over in August and July, we send a lot of our people, and we recommend that they go to the local churches in Canada. The Shepherd's Guide is a local Canadian church list, and these are just places that we recommend that a lot of people go to church after our services are over with. We're a non-denominational worship service on the beach. We're all-inclusive. We have a diverse lineup of speakers, a variety of musicians, Canadians and Americans, Caucasians, Africans, Americans, Latino, etc., male, female, binary. We have pastors and lay people. What we do is we provide a worship service Sunday at 8:45 during the months of July and August. We have beach wheelchairs that are available for the people who can't walk to us. We have interpreters that are present for each service that they use sign language, and we do baptisms upon request. I think we're the only church in Fort Erie that is known to have sign language and interpreters for every service. We usually have anywhere from 10 to 15 wheelchairs that are used every week. And one of the churches, which is called the Journey Church from Crystal Beach, voluntary every summer to bring the people in on wheelchairs. We call them the Holy Rollers. Our first service, we had, it says 33 people, it was actually 13 people plus one dog. And that was in 2011. Over a period of the 9 years we've had services, we've had a total of over 44,000 people attend Church on the Beach. Our very first service, this was when we had 13 people. On the right hand, if you look on the back, right in the center of the tent, you'll see the one dog we had there. Just want to point out the dog is on the private property, so it's legal. We know that if a dog is on the public beach, it's illegal, and we do not allow dogs at our service. 2014, we had 2,500 attendees. It was the largest service that we ever had. If you look at the right hand picture, there was a gentleman by the name of Nick Wojcik. He was an international renowned speaker. He has no arms and no legs. He agreed to come to our service and be our main speaker. And that's when we had over approximately 2,500 people there. In 9 years, we had 2 cancellations, one for rain and one for wind. Of course, our attendance depends on the weather. We've actually had 80 services over the 9 years. This is just showing our cost for insurance for having the services and the cost of inflation. In 2011, our cost of insurance was $291. With inflation in 2020, which we did not have a service, it would have been $1,890. And in 2021, again, we did not have a service, but the cost would have been $1,890. Permits and application have also increased dramatically. The first 5 years, when we had our services, there was no cost whatsoever. In 2016, we agreed to have the cost at $5,000. And that was based on a study that was done by the Fort Erie, which again, I'll bring up very shortly. Why we're here? In 2016, Church on the Beach was denied a permit because of construction that was going on to start on Bay Beach. We appealed the decision to the mayor's office and were granted a permit after consultation with the councillors. In 2016, we suggested paying $5,000, the same as a food truck in the master plan. Again, I will bring that up shortly. In 2017, the town raised our donation from $500 a service to $850 a service, a 70% increase. Also, the number of services were reduced from 10 to 7 because of holidays. The town of Fort Erie Bay Beach master plan was done in December 2015. And that's when permit fees were required for use of the site amenities by large groups such as Church on the Beach. And we were even mentioned in that report. That's where it also mentioned food trucks would be allowed to conduct business on Erie Road, and they would be required to pay $5,000 a season. And that's where we came up with offering to pay $5,000 for having Church on the Beach. We believe we bring economic and community value to the Fort Erie and Bay Beach. We partner with Teacher's Desk and supply schools in Fort Erie. In 2019, we donated over $40,000 worth of supplies. In 2021, over $102,000 worth of supplies were donated. More than 500 visitors per week, 80% from out of town, many from the US, begin arriving at 8:50 and begin leaving at 9:55. In addition, $20,000 worth of radio advertising per year for Fort Erie and Crystal Beach each year. This advertising reaches all Western New York, Northern PA, and Southern Ontario, including Toronto, Oshawa, and beyond. We've partnered with South Niagara Life Ministries, which is in Fort Erie, and donated over $10,000 for their Fort Erie program. We have a Facebook page, a team of volunteers who arrive at 6:30 to clean the beach and make it safe for visitors. We have a brief service that goes from 8:45 to 9:55. And it's approximately 100 meters of space on the beach near the entrance by Ashland Avenue. We provide wheelchairs for the disabled to have access to the service. We provide sign language for the deaf and hearing impaired. We have favorable relationships with local businesses who say they directly benefit from the increased traffic, which includes restaurants, local hotels, motels, gas stations, the Hope Chest bookstore. There are close to 5,000 people on our email list and Facebook page and tens of thousands of listeners on the radio. I'm just attaching a copy of the skids materials that were sent over this past January, which was about $102,000 worth of book supplies. Also was a copy of a letter that was sent in 2019 to the mayor, where we sent $40,000 worth of supplies to the schools. And we just want to thank you and thank the counselors in the past. The last time we met in 2017, we had 100% of the counselors that did agree to extend Church on the Beach. It's our hope that in 2022, which would then be our 10th year of having a service for Church on the Beach. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hine. We appreciate your presentation. Are there any members of council that have any questions? Councillor Noyes?
Well, thank you, Mayor Redekop, too, Mr. Hine. Thank you for your presentation. I understand the attraction of Church on the Beach, with the beach being there. But is there any other area in town that, like any of the larger parks, that would also be sufficient?
We've explored that idea, but the beach is really the basic attraction for a lot of the attendees. Some of the attendees will stay on afterwards, and they'll pay their fee to go onto the beach.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, through the mayor, through you to Mr. Hine. Reading the staff report, they had some concerns about the number of people coming to the beach and also the logistics of handling the capacity of the crowds and people who are coming in. How do you have any solutions to that or any suggestions?
Yes, and what we've done in the past, and this has come up in the past, we do put up a fence along the Ashland Avenue entrance where it restricts the people just to go to the east end of the beach and not onto the beach. And then after the service is over, we direct the people off the beach back out of the entrance. So that was a concern. We did address it, and the fence did appear. We had that for the last 2 years, in 2019 and 2018.
Just
Noyes?
one further question, Mr. Hine.
Sure.
Sure.
How do you go about, okay, so it's 10 o'clock, it's time to leave, and some people, it's a gorgeous day, they say, well, we're going to make a day of it. Who approaches those people, or do they all kind of get told to leave and then they have to come back in? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we tell everybody they should leave. I'll be honest with you, some people, don't leave. However, if they have to use a bathroom during the day, they have to leave and they have to pay to come back in because they don't have the wristband. So, I would have to say there are a few people that probably do take advantage of the system, but by far the majority of the people are coming for the church service and do leave afterwards.
Thank you for that explanation. Nothing further.
Any other councillors? So, Mr. Hine, just to follow up on Councillor Noyes' inquiries, it seems like there's two issues here. One is the number of people that might be permitted, depending on where we are with COVID. By the time we get to the summer, we don't know that. Do you have a mechanism to limit the numbers of attendees if necessary?
Yes, absolutely. We will abide by the rules and guidelines for COVID. In 2019, we canceled, 2020 and 21, we just canceled completely because of the COVID rules. And if necessary, we'll cancel in 2022. It's not our desire, but we will abide by the COVID rules.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm hoping that it's not necessary to have you cancel your services, but there may be some type of limits that are placed on it, 200, 300,
yes,
whatever. You're able to deal with that if necessary.
Yes, we would abide by those rules.
And then the second question that I have really relates to the last question that Councillor Noyes asked relative to individuals leaving the beach. I'm I'm hoping that you're not suggesting that the people that are coming to a church service are actually disregarding your advice to leave the beach after the service is over. These are people that aren't necessarily affiliated with your service? Or am I needing to be disabused of my naivete?
I'm sorry, I don't really understand the question.
You mentioned that there are some people who don't leave the beach after the service has concluded, despite the fact you request them to do so.
That is correct.
Well, that's a bit of a problem for me, because these people should be abiding by the rules, which would be
Right.
at the end of the service, they all leave. Are these people that are attending the service, or are these people that are coming in and taking advantage of the fact the service is there and then really moseying on?
Some of the people who do come in do buy their passes, and they of course, they stay because they bought their passes. And like I said, there are a few people, not that many, that maybe do stay and do take advantage, but I also said if they do have to use the bathrooms, they have to leave and they have to pay when they come back in.
Thank you very much. Any other members of council? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. You made me think of one further question. When do you stop taking admissions? I know you're not collecting and things like that, but if it starts at 6:45 or let's say 7:30, when do you stop letting people into the service? I know it's over at 10 or 9:45. Would you then stop people coming in at, let's say, 9 o'clock?
Well, yes. At 9 o'clock, everybody who does come in after that does have to pay.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you very much, Mr. Hine.
Thank you.
That takes us to our next delegation, which is Jeffrey Aldridge, who wishes to speak regarding our rules of procedure, or a rule of procedure. Good evening, Mr. Aldridge.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Let me get to sharing my screen. Can everybody see that all right?
We can.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, and the fellow public. It was originally my intent to try and speak to you tonight about something that occurred in a public meeting. And I'm not allowed to do that because one of the rules of delegates is Rule 910, which says that you cannot speak to something that was covered in a public meeting. When I started to think about Rule 910, I also realized that that covers the whole issue of effective communication between the town and the public. So I know everybody on council understands what a statutory public meeting is, but I'll just do this for others in the public who may not understand. I did some research, and one of the Ontario Acts says that for certain actions that council will vote on, you must have at least one public meeting, and it is statutory because it is mandated by the Ontario government. What I also found out was the Ontario Act does not say that you can't have more than one public meeting. And it also does not say you can't allow the public to talk about future or past public meetings. I understand that Rule 910 is something that Fort Erie chose to implement. As part of this, I wanted to just touch on transparency and effective communications. One thing I want to acknowledge, and I thank the council, the town of Fort Erie, I think the fact that you have these meetings like we're having now, where we can speak and you can respond, they are just excellent. I'm sure you appreciate that public feels very frustrated we don't have that ability with provincial and federal governments. So I thank you for doing that. So Rule 910 which I think of as reduced transparency, reduced communications, says a delegation is not permitted on any matter that is subject of a future statutory public meeting or a statutory public meeting which has been closed. Now, I've done some research. I think I understand the overall reasons for this, and it is not a simple situation. It is quite complex. The concern I have is that the time between a public meeting and the time that you take action can be a very long, extended period of times, and things change. And I think just like when you went through the public meeting process in the past, is that if something happens now that needs to be brought forward and brought to the public, I think it is important that we have that ability, subject to reasonable restrictions, of course. I look at your other rules that say you only have a certain amount of time, you must speak to the subject matter that you put in your request that you've agreed with. The mayor may curtail the delegation and it's limited to new information. So I would hope that you might consider making modifications to the Rule 910, that under certain circumstances, the public could come back and address you with what amounts to new concerns that have occurred over the past. I'll make an observation. I saw in your meeting last week, a councillor did in fact make reference to a previous public meeting and asked questions and brought up issues that were very, very meaningful. And if I'd had the chance, I would have brought those up. So my question is that if a councillor is allowed to bring up those issues, why isn't somebody from the public also allowed to do that? Or conversely, if that councillor had not spoken to it, I think the public should have had the opportunity to do so. I would like to think that your town's strategic goal, I noticed there's two things in there that are very important. One is the whole concept of stewardship. And the other
Mr. Aldridge, I'm not exactly sure where you're going with this, but I'm not sure that it's 910, and I think it's something that you'd rather address us on. So I'm going to let you finish with this slide, and then I'd like to see the next slide, and then I'll tell you whether I think you're in order or not. Please proceed.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I have no problem terminating it right there. I'm very sensitive to not breaking your rules, so I can just finish this off and I can stop there and we don't have an issue. Is that all right with you, sir?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So when I was talking about the issue of effective communications, I went back and looked at what stewardship means and what it means to have a sense of civic pride. So I want to bring it to your attention that in terms of stewardship, it is important that you look after your citizens and that you're responsible for them first. It's that you ensure that residents know what is going on. I found just yesterday your Let's Talk website. I was looking at various projects and I saw that you could subscribe to some. So the one project, of course, that I'm interested in, I wanted to subscribe so I would get automatic updates. I couldn't figure out how to do that. So I contacted your people who were excellent, responding very quickly this morning, and found out that it's actually optional for any given project as to whether you can subscribe and whether you would get updates. So once again, in terms of effective communication, I would certainly like to see that would be a default, that if you have a project, that we would all automatically, who subscribe to it, would get those updates and know what is going on. So I will wrap that up. I understand the next slide may be one that you prefer not to go to. So I am just asking that this council accept responsibility for the things that happen and make sure that you look after your citizens. At that point, Mr. Mayor, I thank you for letting me talk again, and that'll finish my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aldridge. And are there any members of council that have any questions? And once your screen is unshared, I'll be able to see the councillors. I don't see Councillor Zanko yet. Are any members of council have any questions? If not, then Mr. Aldridge, as you know, even if there is no authority or permission for delegate to address a matter that's been the subject of a closed statutory public meeting or is going to be the subject of a future statutory meeting, councilors are available by email and any other method of communication. And my understanding is that if there is a change that affects the essence or an important aspect of a matter that has been the subject of a public meeting, it is possible for council to direct that there be a further public meeting. So it's not a completely lost cause in that respect. But I appreciate your comments, and staff hopefully will look at your suggestion regarding Let's Talk Fort Erie in terms of a default aspect. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That then takes us to Delegation E, which would be Bridget Lozier, relative to the sale of limited marketability land and PDS 101-2021. Good evening, Ms. Lozier.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. I can share my screen. I just have a very simple set of notes here. So my name is Bridget Lozier. I am the owner of 1700 Royal York Road since May 2020. So I thank you for this opportunity for allowing me to speak. I understand the council's practical strategy to dispose of Block A, also known as Part 2, entirely to the owners of the property, known as Part 1. You know, this would elevate their marketability of their existing lots, provide services that are available on Royal York Road, and increase their lot size in order to meet the minimum lot size requirement of a septic system. However, as an abutting owner of the town land that is possibly for sale, I feel I am equally entitled to its purchase. That said, it's not my intent to landlock the owners of Part 1. If it needs to be noted, my interest in the land is essentially to add to my property the natural swale and treated zone that currently follows the Princeton Avenue Road allowance. It's frequented by a wide range of wildlife, you know, doe and their fawn, and home to a wide variety of interesting birds and fowl. You know, I've only been here not even 2 years, and I still live in suburbia, and it's fantastic here, and it doesn't matter what kind of bad day you have. If you walk outside and you see a deer and their fawn, it's just, so now I just want to buy everything around me. So if I had the funds, I would buy all those vacant lots around me. So that said, since Part 2 of the plan is 0.6 acres, I feel it can be divided to satisfy both abutting landowners. As an alternative, I would propose adding 15 meters of the frontage along the radius of Princeton Avenue road allowance, my property, and this would still leave 20 meters, which is a typical road allowance width of frontage for the owners of Part 1. And that's all I need, all I wanted to say. I know I'm late coming to the party. I only purchased a property in May 2020. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to, you know, voice my needs. If you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Ms. Lozier, and we appreciate your comments and certainly your brevity. And you obviously are familiar with the report. You've made reference to the staff's rationale for making their recommendation. Are there any members of council that have any questions of Ms. Lozier? And once your screen is unshared, I'll be able to see the rest of council.
Oh,
there you go. Any members of council have any questions? If not, thank you very much, Ms. Lozier. We appreciate your delegation.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. Have a great evening.
That takes us then to the consent agenda, and Item 9.2, Councillor Noyes, you have the resolution for the consent agenda. Item 9.2.2B, which is correspondence regarding the, or the minutes, I guess, of the SPCA meeting, and 9.2.2D, which is the correspondence from the City of Niagara Falls, should be removed from the package. And I'm thinking that report CAO 25 LC 17 2021 probably should also be dealt with separately, I think. Madam Clerk, that is the report that includes the minutes of the Land Committee that makes reference to Church on the Beach. So it would be appropriate to...
Yes, it does, Your Worship.
So would it be appropriate to take that report out of the consent agenda and deal with it separately?
Also the next one, actually.
Okay.
That's correct, Your Worship.
So Councillor Noyes, that's CAO 25 LC 17, which is item 9.4 of the agenda. So is there anyone else that wishes anything else removed from the consent agenda? Councillor Noyes?
Mayor Redekop, the report PDS 101-2021 that is below the CAO report, do you also want that one removed?
Unless somebody wants to remove it and deal with it separately.
That's also regarding the land north
Yep.
of Roy.
Does. If somebody wishes to remove it, they may. Did you want to remove it?
Not necessarily, I
Yeah.
just thought it went with the other one.
Yeah, no, I don't see anyone else's hand up. So just for clarity, in response to Councillor Noyes' inquiry, report PDS 101-2021, which is the subject of the last delegation from Ms. Lozier, is in the consent agenda. If anyone wishes it removed, now would be the time to speak up. Don't see any hands up, Councillor Noyes, so we'll proceed then with item 9.2.2B, item 9.2.2D, and item 9.4 to be taken out of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. The council approves consent agenda items with the exception of, I had them all written down here, 9.22B, 9.22D, and 9.4, CAO report -25/LC-17/2021 be removed.
Well, you're going to move the consent agenda except for those
Yeah,
items?
except for those.
As recommended?
As recommended, yes.
Okay, and the seconder on that was?
Councillor McDermott.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments with respect to the items that remain in the consent agenda? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I just wanted to comment on the minutes of the SPCA in that I see that they are taking, steps to improve their governance.
Okay,
And
that's an item that's been taken out of the consent agenda.
Oh.
So you have to hold your fire until we get to that item.
Sorry. Thank you.
Any other items, Councillor Noyes? Any other members of council? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. These lands on Royal York, is there any reason why staff couldn't provide the last delegate with some of that property?
I'm going to ask...
I mean, it sounds like staff is selling it so that they can put a septic system on there. But if the septic system will fit and still allow the other abutting property owner to purchase the remaining portion, then I'm just wondering why staff wouldn't try to satisfy both property owners.
Okay, I'm going to ask Ms. Dolch to respond to that. She's provided a rationale in the report. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the councillor. So our recommendation is to obviously sell to the one owner. We did contemplate the request being put forward this evening, but our concern is the fact that these lands are environmentally constrained as well. So we're hoping to find a balanced approach to get a building and preserve the environment at the same time. That's why we are recommending not to sell to Ms. Lozier at this point in time, because we want to make sure that that environmental study happens and that there's enough space to accommodate the building, new building and a septic system without removing all the environmental lands.
Councillor Lubberts?
Okay, all right, thanks.
Anyone else, any questions? I just wanted to follow up. There were some, in the minutes, there were some actions to be taken, and the one that Councillor Zanko had raised is in our minutes of the November 8th Council and Committee meeting, and that had to do with some street lights, both on Celebration Drive and Thunder Bay Road. We know that the Celebration Drive lights have been installed now. Has Thunder Bay Road lighting also been installed, Mr. Walsh?
We replaced one light 2 weeks ago. I do not have an update. There may be other lights, but I'm not sure right now.
Okay, so when we have our meeting on December the 6th, could you maybe provide us with some information on that prior to that date?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And then, are there any other items? Any other questions by any other members of council? If not, just let me check my notes, make sure I've got everything covered here. If not, then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the items that remain in the consent agenda? That is unanimous. Councillor Noyes, could you then move that we consider item 9.2.2B?
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott, the Council approves the consent agenda item number 9.22B.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to the SPCA minutes? I'm going to let Councillor Noyes go first, Councillor Butler, and then I'll go to you.
I was pleased when I read the minutes and that they're taking definite steps to improve the governance and just move forward with best practices. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had a few questions, actually. I've been watching for the minutes of the meetings, and I noticed that they put two together for this. I must have handed in two together for this month, October and November. I know we had addressed issues that were raised last year, and the SPCA undertook an investigation, and Dr. King made it very clear that they made a commitment to council and the municipality that they would be open and transparent with the results of that report and make it available to us. Have we received a copy of that report yet? It's my understanding that it confirmed and acknowledged the problems and the systemic issues that have been brought forward to our attention.
Mr. Cookett?
Through your worship to the councillor. I don't recall seeing that report. I'll have to go back and look, but I don't believe it was provided. Councillor Lubberts may have a better update since he's our liaison on that committee, but I'll have to look because I honestly don't remember.
So before we go back to you, Councillor Butler, I'll ask Councillor Lubberts if he has any recollection of that.
Yeah, I don't have any recollection of him saying that he would provide the report to the council, but staff would have to bring it back and bring back the minutes of the meeting that he made that statement, or go back to the delegation when he made that statement. I don't remember the SPCA committing to that, but.
All right, well, I'm going to leave, Councillor Butler, I'll leave that to Mr. Cookett to hunt down, and then he can get back to council with respect to that.
Okay, and but I also noticed that Dr. King relinquished his position of chair, but still remains as the director of the corporation. So is there a possibility that we can request that he come back to council to present the corrective actions that they've put in place so far to address those issues?
I think it would be appropriate for the SBCA, once Mr. Cookett has figured out where we are, to for him to invite someone from the SBCA board to address council. I don't know that it has to be Dr. King, but certainly we can follow that.
Mayor Redekop, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, in regards to Dr. King, he did submit his resignation, and there has been some discussion as to how that works with the board. In their bylaw, it says when you hand in your resignation, you vacate your seat on the board. So it looks to me like he has resigned, and he's no longer on the SPCA board.
All right, well, that's a side issue. We'll have Mr. Cookett follow up with your request, Councillor Butler.
Thank you. And then on the October 22nd, under new business, letters to the board from CSS, which I assume is their accounting firm, there was a recommendation that there needs to be a change of accounting first, but I'm just curious, does this relate to, because I don't think that we've received financials in a while. Have we received financials, or can someone?
Mr. Cookett?
Through your worship to the councillor, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Is there an opportunity to request updated financials to find out where we are?
So I'm going to leave that with the CAO, and he can take a look at this whole matter to refresh his memory where we are, and if we can request updated financial information. I think we used to get it.
Yes.
If he can request it, then I'm sure that he will. So I'll leave that with the CAO as well.
Just further to that, it's just, I noticed that there was a conflict of interest also that was resolved at that last meeting. So on November 10th, and I noticed that Councillor Lubberts had regrets, so he wasn't present at that one. But I'm just wondering if that's the conflict of interest with respect to the board of director who is also being paid as a bookkeeper, and that's where this letter comes from, their financial, and if that's going to be incorporated into the report that we're going to be receiving.
Well, I can ask the CAO to ask what the conflict of interest was about.
Okay, thank you. And then on November 10th, under old business, emails to the board of directors will now be sent to all board members, but we were given the distinct impression that any complaints would go to all board members as a new direction and the update to their website. I don't know that that's actually been happening. So could we get information with respect to why that hadn't been happening and why people have still not gotten responses to their complaints?
I can ask the CAO, and Mr. Cookett, I'm not necessarily expecting you to do this. If there are other staff members that work for you, they can certainly follow that up. This was something that was, I believe, supposed to have been acted upon, so if you could follow that up.
I definitely will. I've been taking notes here, so I'll follow up with all this.
Okay.
Thank you. I can send you this to Mr. Cookett. And then I just have one last comment and question. And I understand that the consultant is going to market for new board of directors. But I know, and I know that council knows, that there's at least one person that has been requesting to apply as a board of director, but was redirected by Councillor Lubberts to say that they need to be a member first. But if they're advertising for new board members, that would negate the need to have membership. So can we get clarification on that as well?
The answer from the CAO is definitely.
Okay, thank you. That's all of my questions. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions with respect to the SBCA minutes? If not, then I'll call the question. All in favor of that resolution? Councillor Noyes, are you opposed? Oh, you put your hand up. Okay, you put it up early. I was waiting for you to vote again to double your output. The next item then is 9.2.2 D.
Want me to put that? Okay, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Lubberts. The council approves the consent agenda item number 9.2 2D.
Thank you. I may be anticipating in advance, but Councillor Dubanow, I understand that you're going to be withdrawing your motion, giving notice of motion for a similar type motion with different wording to be returnable December the 13th.
Yes, Your Worship, that is correct.
And so I'm wondering whether this resolution shouldn't be put over to December 13th, and I'm wondering if you'd be interested in moving that it be deferred to December the 13th.
Yes, Your Worship, I would actually like to move that we postpone this until December 13th.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Noyes. The timing is the only issue that's debatable. If there are no other questions, then I'll call the question to defer this to December 13th. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And that, Councillor Noyes, that takes us to the final item, 9.4 CAO 25 LC 17.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. The council approves the consent agenda item number 9.4 CAO-25/LC 17 2021.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments with respect to this? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, with respect to the church on the beach, we had the presentation, and I know that there's a lot of uncertainty right now with regard to COVID capacity restrictions. I'm hoping, as we've done in the past, that we can maybe work together to figure out a way to make this happen. I recall back several years ago when I was a Fort Erie kinsman and we were actually raising money using one of the parking lots in Crystal Beach. We actually happened to have the day that the gentleman that they mentioned was speaking when they had the 2,500 people out. And it was a big draw, not only to the beach itself, but also to the entire Erie Road corridor. I'm just hoping, I understand the challenges with this, and I understand the idea, we may have individuals who, stay on the beach, and there may be some policing with that. I'm just really hoping that we can work together and make this happen, particularly as we progress towards hopefully what is a post COVID world. That's the only comment I wanted to offer up, Your Worship. I kind of like this event, and I'd like to see it continue to happen.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I kind of want to see it happen too, but I do have some concerns. I'm just wondering about perhaps some limitations or some limits that we can put on that might make it a win-win situation. For instance, I'm wondering about not the Sundays that there's a long weekend, because those long weekends tend to be very, very well attended by everyone. So I would think that the other Sundays I would think fine, but if it's a Sunday of a long weekend, I'd probably say with that being an exception, because I think the numbers would then swell considerably, and also perhaps limit the number of attendees. I know they're anticipating a certain amount, but maybe there should be a ceiling put on that certain amount. I can't remember the amount they were anticipating, 700 or something. And one of the staff's concerns was that they have no way of controlling that. Well, there may be a way to control that, and basically an upset limit of X number of participants.
Okay. Are there any other members of council? So, Councillor Noyes, just to follow up your comments and Councillor Dubanow's comments, this report, second recommendation is that council approves the recommendations contained in Appendix 2, and Appendix 2 contains, as the fourth item on page 13 of 13 on that report, that the request of Church on the Beach be denied or not approved. So if we wanted to see some potential Church on the Beach activity in 2022, there should be a direction to staff to engage Church on the Beach regarding Sunday services for 2022 to address items raised during this council meeting by members of council. You interested in doing that?
Yes, I am interested in doing that. I don't know if Councillor Dubanow We will second that.
Are you following along with me, Madam Clerk? Okay.
So, Your Worship, therefore, we would not complete this as recommended. We would basically change it to, and direct staff to address the issues.
So I think that the second paragraph would be that council approves the recommendations contained in Appendix 2 with the exception of Church on the Beach, and direct staff to engage Church on the Beach regarding Sunday services for 2022 with respect to the issues raised by members of council.
I would definitely put that motion forward.
Okay, and that's what you've seconded, Councillor. I think that's, Madam Clerk, I think that's appropriate. Any members of council have any questions or comments with respect to that amendment to the second paragraph of report CAO 25 LC 17? If not, then I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. So then I'll call the question on CAO 25-LC 17 2021 as amended. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. So that takes care of the consent agenda. That takes us to reports. It's now 8:21, so we're going to take a 10-minute break and a 9-minute break. We'll come back at 8:30. It's 8:30, we're now back in session. And we're now moving to reports. And the first resolution, Councillor Lubberts, you have is with respect to the Crystal Beach Hill Cottagers parking lot lease agreement.
Yes, I'll need a seconder, Mayor Redekop.
Seconded by Councillor Noyes.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes. The council authorizes the entry into a lease agreement, a lease and municipal capital facility agreement with the Crystal Beach Hill Cottagers organization for the parking lot located at 0-15652 and 0-15651 Erie Road, based on the recommendations of this report. And further, the council exempts from municipal and school taxes the portion of the land leased from the Crystal Beach Hill Cottagers Association that will be used as a municipal capital facility for the purposes of the municipality and for public use pursuant to Section 100, subsection 6 of Municipal Act 2001, and further that council directs the solicitor to prepare a lease and municipal capital facilities agreement for the lease of the Crystal Beach Hill Cottagers organization's lands, and further, a council directs staff to prepare and submit bylaws to council as required to authorize same.
Are there any questions or comments? I'd like to commend staff, in particular, Signe Hansen, Kira Dolch, Tom Cookett, Kelly Walsh, maybe Sean Hutton, all of whom have been working on this, working with the Crystal Beach Hill Cottagers Association. This is really a fundamental aspect of our parking strategy for Crystal Beach, and they're to be commended for their work and the good relationship that they've built up with that association. So if there are no other questions, all those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us to new business inquiries, and we have a number of resolutions. Councillor McDermott, you have a resolution regarding the Niagara Region Joint Board of Management.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that council appoints John Bridgman, municipal law enforcement officer, as the staff representative to sit on the Joint Board of Management, Niagara Regional Courts for the period of January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Butler, you have a resolution with respect to the resignations from MIAC. Most of these kids have gone on to post-secondary education, and we haven't had a meeting since since February or March of 2020. So these kids have grown up and they're moving on. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just need a seconder. Councillor Zanko, can you second my motion? Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that council accepts the resignations of Craig Amadeo, Trinity Bernier, Megan Dale, Skylar Harrison, Jackson Lowe's, Faith McKenzie, Foster Phibbs, Owen Riel, Rory Ann Smith, Emily Thomas, Stacy Weeks, and Abigail Reed from the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, and further that council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancies in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Dubanow, you have the next resolution with respect to some new blood to MIAC.
Yes, Your Worship, I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that council appoints Sydney Victoria Steele, Mackenzie M. Arts, and Paige Gismondi to the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee for the period ending November 14, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Noyes, you have the next resolution.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott, the council appoints Ashley Marie Greaves to the Accessibility Advisory Committee for the period ending November 14th, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Councillor McDermott, you have the next resolution with respect to the Healthcare Services Committee.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that council appoints Carol Nagy, Hospice Niagara representative to the Community Healthcare Services Committee for the period ending November 14, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Councillor Butler, you have a resolution, and how are we managing this, Madam Clerk?
Your Worship, you've all been provided with a memorandum that identifies the applicants by letter of the alphabet. I will go through the council members and I will ask what letter you choose, and then I will give you the result.
Okay, so you're going to do that first?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we can start with Councillor Lubberts.
Councillor Lubberts, for the resolution regarding the Affordable Housing Committee vacancy, did you get the memo? There were 4 names put forward, and they're all identified by A, B, C, or D.
I don't have it here, Mayor Redekop.
Okay.
It was on Friday, I believe.
Yeah, it was sent out.
There was a number of them.
Sent out on Friday by Rachel Monroe. Let's continue on and we'll come back to
Here it is. Okay.
Okay, Councillor McDermott?
B?
Yes. You said B, I'm sorry?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Councillor Zanko?
B.
Councillor Butler?
B.
Councillor Dubanow?
B.
Councillor Noyes?
B.
Mayor Redekop?
I'll go with B as well.
Councillor Lubberts, have you found your memo?
Well, it sounds like B carries, right? I haven't found it.
But we want to give you a chance to be contrary.
That's all right. I'll vote A.
Good for you.
Your Worship, the name of the successful candidate is William Thomas. So if Ms. Councillor Butler can read that into her motion.
Councillor Butler, did you hear that?
Yes,
William
I did.
Thomas? Okay, please proceed.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that council appoints William Thomas to the Affordable Housing Committee at large member for the period ending November 14th, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. And Councillor Butler, you have the resolution regarding the Ridgeway Business Improvement Area Board of Management.
I don't think I do.
I've got you down as having it.
I'm so sorry.
Resolution number 9.
I'm going to look for that. Sorry.
Okay, I'll tell you what. You're moving. Councillor Zanko, would you mind seconding this resolution? So,
Yes, I can.
Councillor Butler, you're moving that council appoints Christine Tremblay to the Ridgeway Business Improvement Area Board of Management for the period ending November 14th, 2022.
Yes, I do have it. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yep, okay. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. And that takes us to resolution number 10. Councillor Zanko, you have that.
Yes, I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler. The council accepts the resignation of Rick Boyven from the Crystal Beach Business Improvement Area Board of Management, and further that council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor McDermott, you have the next resolution.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, The council appoints David Bergeron to the Crystal Beach Business Improvement Area Board of Management for the period ending November 14th, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. This next resolution is necessary in order for me to be actually an official member of the Crystal Beach BIA. So Councillor Dubanow, would you please proceed?
Certainly, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council appoints Mayor Redekop as the Council representative to the Crystal Beach Business Improvement Area Board of Management for the period ending November 14, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Are there any other items of, any other inquiries or items of new business? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Just to follow up on our delegations from earlier with Marcy Jacqueline and her friend. I'm wondering if staff can look into further about this natural assets and have some discussion with the region as to where they're going with it, and any other local municipalities that might be interested. I'm wondering if maybe we can do something jointly and have some assessments done in the region. But I'd like staff to at least explore the opportunity.
Yeah, so staff can make some inquiries. I think it's an interesting topic, particularly now that we're getting into such weather events. So Mr. Cook has indicated that he will speak to the region, find out among his CAO colleagues if any of the area municipalities are engaged in that, maybe even find out what stage NPCA is at on this as well. And then when we get that information, we can go from there. Any other inquiries or items of new business? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, just a quick comment, Your Worship. I just want to extend my appreciation to the Bridgeburg Business Improvement Area for the Santa Claus Parade that they organized on Saturday. It was very well attended. I thought it was fantastic to see so many children out there enjoying a parade. My understanding is this is the first time they took it on, and for something that they're doing the first time, I thought it was fairly well organized. Parades are never easy to put together, and I just got to give credit where credit is due. Very excellent event. It was a privilege to be in the parade and get to see so many people. And I just wanted to say that, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
They did an excellent job, and I was shocked when some of the children told me, as I asked them whether they'd been good this past year. Some of them said no. So I guess they get marks for honesty. Okay, that takes us to motions. Councillor Dubanow, you have a motion.
Yes, Your Worship. Now, we already moved this, and I'm going to be withdrawing it this evening to give notice related to the changes. Do you want me to read my very, very long... Okay.
You can simply withdraw.
Yeah, in that case, Your Worship, I'll be withdrawing this, and I'll be giving notice when we get to that in a moment, Your Worship.
Okay, perfect. That then would take us to the next motion that's on the agenda, and that's Councillor Butler.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Can I ask Councillor Zanko to second this one as well? Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that oops, wrong one. Sorry. I was reading the same one that I did. I apologize. Whereas a presentation made to council regarding a bird-friendly city initiative by Linda Goodrich and Deb Shirk, members of the Burt Miller Nature Club, on October 25th, 2021, requested that the municipality of the town of Fort Erie consider initiatives that would enhance the initiative. Now therefore be it resolved that the municipal council of the town of Fort Erie directs staff to provide a memorandum offering suggestions on how staff can investigate and provide recommendations on becoming a bird-friendly municipality.
Did you wish to speak to that?
Well, I mean, it goes hand in hand with the presentation that we just received today about climate change and what we can do to protect nature and the animals that are attached to it. So I think it's important for us to examine what we can do as part of that to make it safer environment and help us all out in the long run as well.
Thank you. Ms. Dolce, does this provide you with adequate direction?
Thank you, Your Worship. It does. What we'll be providing is offering how to become a bird-friendly municipality and provide recommendations on that as well.
Thank you. Any other members of council have any other questions? If not, oh, sorry, Councillor McDermott.
No, I just like to add, Your Worship, that birding is quite a thing around this community, as you well know, and that it does attract a number of visitors to the community just based on a lot along the river, along the lakes. So I do agree that we should be looking into this, and I support what we have here today, and I look forward to supporting what Ms. Dolce brings forward.
Thank you. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed? That is carried. That then takes us to Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. Whereas the current Parks and Beaches bylaw states the following, Section 6, no person shall A, permit a dog to be in any park within the town except for the following parks: Lion, Sugar Bowl, Battle of Ridgeway Park, the Friendship Trail. B, permit a dog to be in any public park described in Section 6A, except on a leash measuring no more than 182 centimeters, 6 feet, and only on grassy areas of said parks. And C, permit or allow a dog to defecate upon park property described in Section 6A, unless the owner or person in charge of the dog cleans up the excrement and sanitary dispose of the same forthwith. And whereas the current dog bylaw states the following, Part 3, Section 8, in bracket 7, no person shall permit a dog to be in, on, or in any cemetery, public beach, or park within the town except for the following parks: Lions, Sugar Bowl Park, Battle of Ridgeway Park, the Friendship Trail. And whereas the residents have requested permission to walk their dogs pursuant to the conditions set out in bylaw number 11903 as amended, and have submitted a petition with approximately 100 names in support of this, indicating strong public support, that AC Douglas Park 2, which is a passive park, there are no play structures or any playing fields, and there is a paved path that goes throughout the park.
Did you wish to speak to that, Councillor Noyes?
Yes, I do. The residents, this was initiated by the residents, and they've taken the initiative to have 100 people signing their petition, and I think it makes sense. I mean, we encourage active participation and active lifestyles and things like that, and your dogs are very close to people, and it's a perfect situation to allow this. We already have 3 parks, and I know in discussing this with staff, it's been very well received. There doesn't seem to be any ongoing problem in the current parks that it's now currently being allowed in. So I think this is definitely a move in the right direction. I will say that if I was to think this through again, I would probably request that all passive parks be allowed, not just AC Douglas 2, but at the point, and I know I discussed this with Ms. Schofield, and because my motion was restricted to AC Douglas Park 2, that I could not go there, to change my motion. So I did want to mention that I do hope that all passive parks in the town will be able to at some point have the dogs allowed in there. The other part I wanted to mention too is that it's because it's the current bylaw, so we have to do that about the grassy areas. We've taken that out in our animal control bylaw, but again, because my motion didn't refer to that, I could not take it out of this one. But currently in our animal control bylaw, they can walk on the paved path. They don't have to walk just on grassy areas. Again, I understand from staff, there has been some discussion that the beaches and parks bylaw does need to be looked at, and they are thinking about being much more friendly to dogs. But that's something that's going to be hopefully happening in the future.
Man and woman's best friend.
Yes.
Any other comments, Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and definitely as a dog owner myself, I appreciate this, and I intend to fully support it. I think this is a good motion that Councillor Noyes has brought forward. I'm just wondering, Your Worship, she did raise the point about possibly exploring this for all passive parks, and with staff perhaps reviewing this, I'm almost wondering, now that this is on the floor, is it possible to move an amendment for staff to explore that? Would that be in order, or?
No, but you're the chair of Planning and Development Services, are you not?
Yes, I am.
And I think parks come within that gambit.
I think that would be infrastructure, Your Worship.
When you have your next meeting of Planning and Development Services, I think you should raise this issue and see if there can be some cross-referencing.
Yeah, actually, I think we have a meeting coming up on December 1st, if I recall.
The manager of community planning is within the planning department.
Oh, yes, you're right, Your Worship, yes. The maintenance versus absolutely. Yeah, because I think we have a meeting coming up on December 1st, so that way I can bring that up and raise it and perhaps move forward.
That would be my suggestion.
All right. I intend to fully support this. Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes.
Any other councillors? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also support this, and I feel very similar to Councillor Dubanow, so I do look forward to discussing this at our next planning meeting. But I guess what I'm wondering is, if I could, through you to Ms. Dolch, is why is it that we have this restriction in place now? It really makes no sense to me that residents can't bring their leash dogs to parks, and it's so confusing because, as you know, a lot of residents don't realize this, and some of them have been ticketed for this because of not realizing it. So I'm sure there's some reason behind it. I'm wondering if you could tell me what that reason is.
Ms. Dolch, would you know the history of that?
Sure, through you to the councillor. So in terms of this bylaw, it's a bit older. Obviously, I can only assume, to be honest, why it was restricted originally. I'm guessing maybe clean up, things like that, put that in place. But I can tell you that we have done research over this past summer. We have checked with other municipalities, looked at other municipalities, and they do allow the dogs on leashes in parks, and it's something we are exploring. Right now we have a vacancy in our supervisor bylaw, so we're waiting for that position to be filled in order to talk to them further about modifying this bylaw.
Councillor Zanko.
Okay, that makes me very happy to hear. Thank you.
Any other members of council? If not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. So that then takes us to notices of motion. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to give notice of motion regarding the requirement for all individuals entering Canada. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. I'd like to give notice of motion regarding the required molecular testing to enter Canada. And that will be returnable. I believe our next regular council meeting is December 13th.
That's correct. December 13th, correct? Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Any other notices of motion? Then I'm going to go to consideration of bylaws. And numbers 143 and 144 should be removed from the package. Councillor Lubberts, you have the bylaw package for first and second reading. So 143 and 144 come out. Are there any other bylaws that anyone wishes removed from the package? Councillor Lubberts?
Yeah, Mayor Redekop, can we remove 146 as well?
Yes, we can. I anticipated you might want that. So could you proceed then with, if there are no others, could you proceed with first and second reading of the amended bylaw package, please?
Oh, Your Worship?
I'm sorry, Councillor Zanko, I'm sorry.
You have removed 146 out of the package, but I do have a conflict with that bylaw, and it totally slipped my mind to declare that at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay. And your conflict is?
My son works for Cider Brothers.
Right, sorry. You've got that, Madam Clerk? Okay, so we'll deal, yes. That's good that we've taken it out then. Councillor Lubberts, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. I need a seconder as well.
Got it. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor. Moved by myself and second by Councillor McDermott that the bylaw package containing Bylaw 140, 2021 to accept and declare a daylighting triangle as a public highway at the southwest intersection of Cook Avenue and Poplar Avenue, 129 Cook Avenue, 1314420 Ontario Limited, B. Cosby. Bylaw 141, 2021 to assume primary services in the Dominion Woods subdivision, Phase 1, Plan 59M, 375, Dominion Woods, Inc., Mark Bassanio. 142-2021 to assume secondary services to the Dominion Woods subdivision, Phase 1, Plan 59M, 375, Dominion Woods, Inc., Mark Bassanio. 145-2021 to exempt certain lots in Plan 59M 452 from part lot control, Block 2, Alderson Court, Park Lane Place subdivision, Park Lane Homes Builders Limited. Is given first and second reading.
Are there any, all those in favor? That is carried. So the amended bylaw package is on the floor for questions or comments. Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Bylaw 140, the daylighting triangle. I'm just wondering if they can explain what is the purpose of the daylighting triangle on this corner and why we don't have that on other corners in Thunder Bay, or do we have it on other corners in Thunder Bay?
Ms. Dolce, would you know that, or is that Mr. Walsh? Or who would I go to?
Your Worship, I can start if Mr. Walsh wants to add anything further, he can do so. So we require the daylighting triangle. Obviously, we take ownership of that daylighting triangle to protect those sight lines. So we do that on new subdivisions and where we can. Not in all cases do all roads have those, but we take them when we can and when development occurs.
Councillor Lubberts?
All right, now I was just wondering, is there a problem with sight at that corner with the new subdivision? Is there going to be a problem?
Policy. I think it's just a matter of policy to ensure that there aren't any problems with sight lines, but Ms. Dolce, can you comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. No, there isn't any problems. It's just part of a development application that's come forward, and as part of that, we take the sight triangle.
Councillor Lubberts?
So it's not a normal policy? We don't do it to everybody?
I believe it is a policy, and I believe we do it, as Ms. Dolce said, when we can.
Well, I thought Ms. Dolce said it wasn't a policy.
Ms. Dolce?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the Councillor. No, it is a policy.
Okay.
Sorry, I might have just misquoted. It's not a problem, but it is a policy that when development occurs, we do take it.
Okay, all right, thanks. Just wondering.
Any other questions or comments? If not, then Councillor Zanko will go to you for third and final reading of the amended bylaw package, please.
I don't think I have that resolution.
I've got you down for it. It's resolution number 17.
No, I don't.
Okay, so would you like to move, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaws 140-2021, 141-2021, 142-2021, and 145-2021 be given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal?
Yes, thank you.
You're agreeable, Councillor Butler? Okay. That bylaw package as amended is on the floor for any further questions or comments. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. So, Councillor Lubberts, I'm going to go back to you, and we're going to deal with bylaw 1. We're going to deal with these bylaws separately, so we'll deal with 143 first.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Redekop, moved by myself and second by Councillor McDermott, that bylaw number 143, 2021, to enact an amendment to the official plan adopted by bylaw 150-06 for the town of Fort Erie area, amendment number 56, Crystal Beach secondary plan. Is given first and second reading, sorry.
Well, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so that bylaw is on the floor for questions or comments. Councillor Lubberts.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm just wondering if this is the official plan amendment that identifies the properties, I'm assuming.
That is correct.
Let me give, okay, I think if I remember correctly, the property associated with the tennis and yacht club, I think there was the request that the parking be one parking space per unit. Or was that in the official, the zoning bylaw amendment? That might have been the zoning bylaw amendment, correct?
Well, I see Mr. Wasserman here. Are you familiar with the issue? Mr. Wasserman?
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor. I am not familiar with the issue. Sorry, Mayor. I don't know if I can maybe go to Carrie Dolch.
Sure.
Maybe she knows what the issue would be.
Ms. Dolch, are you familiar with some parking lot issue with Tennis and Yacht Club, other than their request that there be a deferral of their lands that have been designated in this plan for future development?
Your Worship, no, I'm not aware of the issue, but I can, parking is through the zoning bylaw. The requirements for parking are through the zoning bylaw, not through the official plan, if that's helpful.
Yes, it is helpful. So
Yeah, I think it was in the other report. So no, I'm fine with this. Thanks, Mayor Redekop.
you're fine with the official plan, the secondary plan, Crystal Beach secondary plan amendment to the official plan?
The official, this here motion here, I'm looking like I'm good with. I just got a couple questions with everything. With the secondary plan, I'm sorry. So I'll withdraw my questions.
Does anybody else have any questions? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I do have some questions about the change in the density, and particularly in regards to the Rebstock property. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but I think we're all familiar with what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's on page 36 of the, sorry, 34 of the bylaw.
Yes, basically, I think it's B, that medium density was the entire site for 50 to 100 units per hectare will assist. And I'm not in favor of that. I think medium density needs to be decreased. And I think it should be a maximum of 50 units per hectare. I think that's 25 to 50 would be more in keeping with the rest of the area and the rest of the parts of Crystal Beach that are also zoned multi-residential.
Okay. we may come back to you. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just touching on what Councillor Noyes brought up, and I certainly appreciate the issue and the comments from members in the community. There's two concerns I have with that course of action. The first is based on the explanations given to us by our planning director, Ms. Dolch. If we remove that density from the Rebstock Road property or other properties, based on the information that's handed down to us from the region, which is based on provincial policy statements, we would need to find another location to put those housing units in as far as the secondary plan is. So if we reduce it by, if we reduce it to 25 to 50 on this property, that means somewhere else would have to go to 50 to 100. And knowing, I watched the open house. I was, being chair of planning. I was involved in those discussions. I know we've had other members of the community come out and express concern with this. I'm just not sure where would we be going, and would we be opening that book all over again when we've come this far. The second point, and this is more broad in scope and perhaps more philosophical more than anything else, is that for better or worse, we're dealing with properties that are becoming very expensive, whether it's a house, whether it's land. It is getting very expensive to build homes, to build apartments, to build condos, townhouses, what have you. The way that you can get around that is by increasing density. Now, I'm not speaking as to whether, that this is the right location. I'm just speaking from, more broad terms here. And as we progress along and as we attempt to address our issues related to housing affordability, these are going to be challenges that council is going to be facing going forward, this council and future councils. Density is going to be a thing regardless of whether we like it or not. That's just the reality of the situation. And it's going to be up to us as members of council to be stewards of that density and work with the community to find the right locations for it. With the Crystal Beach secondary plan, we did go through a process. We did take input from the public to determine, maybe we don't want 6 stories on Erie Road. Maybe we need to balance that out. I think that process went forward well. I know there's members of the community that disagree, but having followed along and saw how that process unfolded, I'm good with supporting this. That does not mean, and I'm qualifying this, Your Worship, that does not mean that anything that may be planned for that property that we have yet to get reports or public meetings for that I would support. I'm still waiting to see what comes forward before council. But this is going to be a challenge that we're going to be facing going forward, is the issue of how do we balance density in our community and the need for that to kind of deaden the blow of housing affordability and balance that in a community that is 30,000 people, fairly low density. That's going to be our job. And as we have these applications come forward as part of secondary plans or as outside of the secondary plan areas, that's where it falls to us. So I'm leery about opening that book back up, but I just wanted to offer up some comments, Your Worship, on the whole, where we're going from here. This is just the beginning. This is not going to be the last challenge that we face when it comes to density. And I just wanted to offer up those comments, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other members of council? Councillor Lubberts. Kind of already spoke on this. Is there anyone else that wishes to weigh in before I go back to Councillor Lubberts? Go ahead.
No, I withdrew anything from this at first, so.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand where Councillor Dubanow is coming from, but I got a couple problems here. The secondary plan itself, I was going to request that we remove the this property from the secondary plan and have it dealt with separately. And we don't know what the results of that's going to be. So if we move forward with this motion, that defeats trying to remove the property from the secondary plan, because we're gonna approve it, or we're gonna vote on it. And so that creates a problem. As far as the 100 units per hectare, I understand where Councillor Dubanow is coming from, but we don't necessarily have to make another property 100 units per hectare. If you follow what staff has been telling us, is that they removed the height limits, decreased the height limits on Erie and Derby roads. So they had to go other places and find other blocks of land where they could rezone medium density, which they did. They found those properties. And I'm sure that they can find properties, because if you look at what is zoned for 100 units per hectare, it's only 4 pieces of property. And so I don't know how many units that translates to, but we don't have to meet any targets when it comes to the definition of density. All we need to do is meet our percentages to the region and the province. So I think staff can find other blocks of land that we can zone medium density. We have to keep in mind when we look at secondary plan for Crystal Beach, in all the other secondary plans that we had in Fort Erie, we included all the properties that were in the boundary of the secondary plan area. Whereas in Crystal Beach, we didn't include the waterfront. And I'm not advocating that we put high rises on the waterfront, because everybody knows where I come from there. But I do know that, and you can be assured, that there is going to be a medium density development that's going to come our way for the waterfront. And if it's reasonable, then it's reasonable. If it meets the criteria, it meets the criteria. And I'm sure that if we explain to the region and the province that with our situation here in Crystal Beach, meeting their targets was difficult because we didn't have the space to meet their targets. And I don't know how much square meters or square feet we took away by not including the waterfront. And I'm not advocating that we use the waterfront, but I think staff could have found a couple other blocks of land to accommodate to maintain the 25 to 50. Looking at all of that and asking why these density limits got changed, I got all kinds of different answers. One of the answers was it was in response to Councillor Butler's motion from May 31st. But on May 31st, if you look at that motion, it didn't mention anything about density. And I sent an email to Mr. Wasserman earlier today, and his response was that Councillor Butler's motion didn't talk about density. It was more about affordability. So it was her motion. For some reason, they decided that they would respond to it and change the density. And now Mr. Wasserman tells me that her motion had nothing to do with density. So I still need to know, where did we come up with this change in density? I don't understand how we can just out of the blue come up with from 50 to 100 units. That's double the density. And someone needs to explain to me a lot better than it's been explained on how we got there, because it's very confusing to me as to when it got there, how it got there, and what the rationale is behind it. And I can't support 100 units per hectare. And I know Councillor Noyes is, her request is to remove it from this land. But I have to ask that we remove it from all 4 of the lands that are located, that are listed at 100 units per hectare. There's no need for it. We can find it. And if it means that we need to defer this whole project until we get those lands, then maybe we can do that. I got an email earlier today from Ms. Dolch. I requested that maybe we could use some of the lands in the Thunder Bay Road allowance and behind St. George's Court. She's not comfortable with that, but I think that it's worth some discussion with council and with the public, because it's a road allowance that connects Ridgeway Road and Ridge Road South. It's in behind Far Avenue. It's all open land. There's no residential in there, so it'd be very, very little impact on the residents. And I don't know that we have to actually have a road in order to rezone it. It's just that if someone's going to build in there, then they'll have to build the road. No different than what they're doing on Hazelwood. They're putting the development in there. That's all included in the rezoning. So I think staff could find it. I think if it's going to take a deferral for this project for a month, I mean, we've been waiting since 2003 in Crystal Beach for the secondary plan. Waiting another month or 2 isn't going to hurt, and it's not going to hurt the community improvement plan as well, because another month isn't going to make or break anybody in Crystal Beach. But if we're going to do this, we're going to put a secondary plan together. We need to make sure that our secondary plan is right. And right now, we've got too much controversy over this secondary plan. I got an email earlier today from a developer. They want to change their plan of subdivision because our secondary plan doesn't line up with what they want in their subdivision. Ms. Dolch has indicated on Friday, we already have an appeal scheduled for our secondary plan. We haven't even voted on it yet. And we got some problems with the secondary plan. And I caution everybody, don't vote on this if you're not 100% sure that this is what the people for Crystal Beach want. They're upset about the density. It was thrown at them at the last minute. Nobody understood it. And I think we owe them the opportunity to at least be heard. And I think we owe it to ourselves to at least sit down with staff and see if there's a possibility that we can pick up a couple other blocks of land to maintain our 50 units per hectare.
Anyone else wish to speak to the matter? Before I go back to you, Councillor Dubanow, Councillor Butler.
I just have a couple of questions. I agree with what Councillor Dubanow had said, and I understand what Councillor Lubberts is saying. But my understanding is that this mandate is handed down to us from the province, and then the region divides it up between the municipalities and says this is how much you have to do for medium density and have enough housing to support the people that are in need. Am I correct in that assumption? Because I thought I had heard that the last time.
Ms. Dolch, can you comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the councillor. That's correct. So it does come from the province and it's based on growth to 2041 at this point. There is 2051 numbers coming down. The region did request that staff consider 2051 numbers, but we're too far along in the Crystal Beach process to allocate more density to that area. So we've just stuck with the 2041 numbers. Once we get the final allocation of numbers, we may have to revisit areas, but right now it's based on 2041 numbers of growth. And those growth allocations are for the town of Fort Erie as a whole. And what we do from there is divvy them up into the 6 communities that we have in the neighborhoods. And then we determine which growth is going where. So those are allocated and determined by us on how much. Obviously, Crystal Beach took a lower percentage of that than other areas.
So if we were to vote in favor of this tonight, would we have the capability of saying, yes, we voted in favor of this, but this particular development does not fit in this area with the amount of units that you're prescribing?
Ms. Dolch?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the councillor. That is your prerogative. Obviously, we've recommended the 100 units per hectare. You do have that ability to make that change. Obviously, it can be appealed as well on the other side, but it is something that you can do at this point. The only thing I caution you is that you do need to pass a resolution before doing that, only because at the public meeting, it was presented at 100 units per hectare. So in this instance, then the public wouldn't have been notified of the change that you're proposing, if you're proposing a new change or decrease in density or an increase. I'm assuming it's not an increase, so I'll say decrease. Then you'd have to notify or pass a resolution as a council that no further public meeting would be required if you felt that was appropriate to not have further consultation.
Okay. And if we decide that that the density doesn't fit in that area, it would have to be picked up by the other 5 hamlets in Fort Erie, correct?
Ms. Dolch?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the councillor. That's correct. Eventually, we'd have to ascertain what that number is, and then determine where we would pick those up in the future and how. So.
And to Councillor Lubberts' point, if there's other areas within the community that could facilitate that kind of density, that wouldn't be problematic for, I guess, smaller properties and surrounding neighborhoods. Do we know if we have that kind of availability? I mean, I would think that, how would you be able to facilitate that if you don't own it? And if somebody else owns it, how do you redirect the developer to that other property once they purchase that property? It just seems a little bit messy. So I wonder if you have any comments with respect to that.
Ms. Dolch?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the councillor. My only concern at this point in time, obviously, just related to the first speech secondary plan is obviously any other property you choose or pick, we haven't done public consultation on it. That would be my concern. Obviously, I caution you on that, because it does require adequate public consultation. We have done so through this process already with the other sites, but to pick a new site, it is difficult to do at this late stage in the game.
Okay. Your Worship, I'm going to listen to what everybody else has to say and then make a decision based on that. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Dubanow. I've got Councillor Lubberts wanting to speak again. Councillor Zanko, did you want to speak? If not, can I hand the chair to you? Because I'd like to ask some questions and I'd like to speak.
You can hand the chair to me.
Thank you. So, Ms. Dolch, if I might, my understanding is that this whole process began in February of 2018. Is that correct? And
that's correct, Your Worship.
And PDS 86 has a whole listing of all of the meetings of the focus group, reports to council, the open houses, of which there were, I believe, 3, meetings with the various organizations in the community. It goes on for almost 3 pages, ending in the public meeting which took place in June of this year. And that public meeting was accompanied by a report, PDS 47-2021, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So my understanding, if I might, Madam Chair, is that the third open house, which was held on May the 18th, provided for medium density for this Rebstock parcel, which is referred to at section 4.22.9 in the secondary plan, 0.99. That open house indicated medium density 25 to 75 units per hectare. Is that your recollection?
Thank you, Your Worship. That's my recollection, but I will ask Peter Vossman just to confirm that from that open house meeting date.
Through to Kira, I can confirm that on the public open house, the third public open house, medium density residential will generally be between 25 and 50 units per hectare. A few selected areas may be 75 units per hectare. So that is as per public open house 3 presentation.
Okay, and if I might, Madam Chair, my understanding is that Ms. Dolch has some concern. Her recollection is that the maximum density at that open house was 75 as opposed to 50. You're much more concerned about 75 as opposed to 50 at the open house. Is that our understanding?
Ms. Dolch? Thank you, Your Worship. That's correct. My understanding was it was presented at 75 at that open house. And I can elaborate even at the previous open house. It was identified as a 3-story townhouse or low-rise apartment on this site. So it's been identified early on in the development process that these lands would be for intensification.
And PDS 47, which was the report, the information report that accompanied the public meeting on June the 21st, did identify this parcel for a medium density of 50 to 100. Councillor Lubberts seems to be focusing on just the motion that was passed at the end of May regarding Councillor Butler's concerns about affordable housing. And there was another factor that was taken into account by staff, as I recall. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship. Sorry, that's correct, Your Worship. The main factor was the fact that the commercial core was reduced in density. That's not to say that affordability wasn't top of our mind as well. We're looking for sites for affordability. Obviously, this council is looking for sites for affordability. This was a good location for affordable housing. And in terms of just based on the fact that it's located adjacent to the park, close to the core of Ridgeway, close to the other commercial core at the corner of Rebstock and Ridgeway Road. So there's a number of factors here on that site, but it wasn't Councillor Butler motion. It was kind of in part, it had something to do with affordability, but the main thrust of it was the fact that we had to pick up that additional density, and with that additional density sometimes can realize affordability.
And the density, if I might, Madam Chair, the density in the planner's mind is really an important aspect of affordability of housing, is it not?
Thank you. Through you to His Worship. Yes, it is. Because of rising land costs, the difficulty in obtaining affordable housing is increasing density to minimize and spread the cost of those land costs over multiple units.
And in terms of the, where the density is going to be located, if I might, Madam Chair, to Ms. Dolch, the shortfall on any one site can be picked up any place else in the municipality. It doesn't have to be within the area of a secondary plan or within the boundaries of what we would consider to be a neighborhood. Isn't that correct?
Ms. Dolch. Thank you, Councillor, through you to His Worship. That is correct. So generally the numbers, it's for our whole municipality. We need to achieve those numbers for the whole of the municipality. The only thing I caution is obviously in each neighborhood we go to, if we start decreasing densities, eventually we'll run into a big problem, whereas one area may require high densities in order to achieve if we keep reducing. But generally that's correct. We kind of spread it out equally, but that doesn't mean it can't be picked up in other communities, in other areas.
But we have been working with some developers with respect to some high-rise buildings which would create high density. Are we not currently?
Ms. Dolch. Through you to His Worship, that's correct. We have increased density. Generally, right now, the numbers that we calculate are done through secondary planning, but that's not to say that you can't pick those up in future secondary plans in certain key areas. But if I may, when you develop inside an urban area boundary, the goal of the region and the policies of the region and the province are that you are to pick up 80 persons in job or 50 persons in jobs per hectare. So that also increases the density, and that's just in the built form itself. So you have to subtract that first, and then any additional density you have above that obviously would go towards that allocation.
The land, this Rebstock parcel 4.22.9.9 is currently zoned neighborhood development. How is it designated in the official plan, the current official plan?
Thank you, Your Worship. It is designated urban residential, which permits a variety of forms of housing, singles, semis, towns, apartments.
And the neighborhood development zoning, what does that do for this particular parcel on Rebstock Road?
Thank you, Your Worship. The neighborhood development zone is a placeholder zone for residential development. So generally what it does is we don't know the form it's going to take at that point in time. So when the official plan was approved in 2006, finally approved by the region in 2011, we passed our zoning bylaw in 2013 to bring parcels in. At that point, all those things, we weren't prepared at that time to pick a zone or a density for it, like a zone for that. So we didn't pick RM1, we didn't a residential multiple zone for that site at that time. We knew that further work was going to be needed through secondary plan work as well as possibly through development applications. Sometimes one comes before the other, but in this case, it's come just a bit before.
So if I might, Madam Chair, to Ms. Dolch, in terms of this neighborhood development zoning, that's like a blank slate, is it not?
Dolch? Through you, His Worship, that's correct. It is a blank slate for residential development. There's no set densities. It's just an open slate for consideration.
Is it preferable to have a set density range for these types of parcels?
Through you, His Worship, there's no set density range. It's just an open slate for consideration. Is it preferable to have set density range for these types of parcels? Ms. Dolch? Through you to His Worship, Ideally, yes. You can't have them in all instances. Obviously, as we go through a secondary plan process, we aim to get rid of neighborhood development because we want to start to focus on what we want to achieve in each area. But in the absence of a secondary plan, a lot of times we just put the neighborhood development zoning in place, knowing that further amendments would be required to permit development.
And if I might, Madam Chair, maybe Mr. Wasserman would know this offhand. There are a number of parcels within the secondary plan area that have a density target of 25 to 50 units per hectare. Is that not correct?
Mr. Wasserman?
Through you to Mayor. Yes, that is correct. There is one, I actually have a plan in front of me at the moment. So 1, 2, 3. I can currently see 6 parcels that have between 25 and 50 dwelling units per hectare.
And when, if I might, Madam Chair, when the planning staff is developing this plan, they're bearing in mind a number of factors, I presume, and in fact, Mr. Wasserman, the purpose as defined in the secondary plan itself, which is found at section 4.22.1 on page 18, the purpose of the Crystal Beach secondary plan is to set in place a policy framework to provide opportunities for new or renewed development in the plan area while remaining conscious and sensitive to the established community as a whole. And that's somewhat the reason why there are differing ranges for density within the secondary plan. Is that not correct?
I don't know. Ms. Stoltz, did you want to take that, or Mr. Wasserman?
Sure, I can take that. Thank you. Through you to His Worship. So in terms of neighborhood context, we look at a lot of things when we pick densities for certain sites. We look at the proximity, ped shed proximity, and ped shed means like a 5-minute ped shed where you can get to your commercial areas within the 5-minute walk. So we look at those areas. What's the properties that are closest to those commercial cores? We also look at, you know, how a site functions, whether there's other amenities in close proximity, such as like major open space or other things that could help serve that density. So we do look at all those factors when we do make a decision on these. In terms of the compatibility, there are some, as we go through development applications, as we go through site planning, those are things where we try to minimize impacts. We try to provide increased buffering, landscaping, those kind of things to help mitigate. But in this case, in particular on Rebstock, this property was always envisioned for 3-story development. It's just the change in density that has occurred. Originally, the concepts were for apartment construction.
So if I might, just to follow up on that, Madam Chair, yeah. When you say always intended for 3-story development, when did always start?
Through to His Worship, the first indication to the public anyway, from what I can see, and it may have occurred earlier in focus group meetings, but I'd have to look back further. But on August 28, 2019, it was presented to the public in a public information session where it was clearly indicated that the lands were to be for 3-story apartments, townhouses, or low-rise apartment, 3-story apartments. So it was contemplated even back then. There was also concepts that were created by Mr. Miller back then as part of this development, as part of this secondary plan. In that contemplation, there was 3-story apartment buildings as well as townhomes. So that was contemplated early on in the process.
Okay, so always is in the context of the secondary planning process, which started in February of 2018. You've referenced August of 2019, and we're now in November of 2020. 21. Did those conceptual drawings of Mr. Wasserman, were they ever made available at any of the public open houses?
Mr. Wasserman or Ms. Dortch?
I believe it was Mr. Miller's concepts, sorry. I am not aware if they were made public. I just know and I can share my screen on and we can look into that for you should you want that information. But at the public open house or the public information center that Mr. Miller held, you can see here it indicates the lands hold potential for intensification infill. 3-story apartments, low-rise 3-story apartments can leverage active recreational offerings, library, and would be well suited for younger families or the starter market. So it was identified to the public then about the 3 stories. Again, I don't know if the concepts were shared at that point, but I can look into that if that's something council wishes.
Right, and that's from August of 2019?
That's correct.
Okay. The under the residential general provisions of the official plan 422.6 on page 24 states, in considering medium density and high density residential uses, regard shall be given to the following. A, the height, bulk, and arrangement of buildings and structures to achieve a harmonious design, compatible integration with the surrounding area, and not negatively impact on lower density residential uses. That seems to be, if I might, Madam Chair, to Ms. Dolch, that seems to be a recognition that when there is going to be a greater density provided for in an area that's adjacent to an existing neighborhood, there will be some regard to what's in the neighborhood that exists. Would you agree with that?
Ms. Dortch?
Through to His Worship, that's correct. Those are the factors that, as we prepare, for example, on the Rebstock property, because we do have an development application before us, that's something that the planners will have to factor in. Unfortunately, in this case, the secondary plan isn't yet in place, but there are other provisions in our official plan currently that also speak to amendments and the requirements for compatibility and things like that that will have to be addressed through that recommendation report that staff will prepare for council.
Yeah, and I don't want to dwell on what may be coming forward as a proposal for development on this particular parcel, but my understanding is that the proponent of that development has been dealing with staff on the basis of the existing official plan. Is that correct?
Ms. Dortch?
Through to His Worship, that's correct. It's based on, when an application's made, it's the policies of the day that apply. And the policies of the day at that time when their application was made was the current official plan and zoning, which was urban residential neighborhood development.
And what, if any, is the significance of this secondary plan being passed in relation to that particular development proposal?
Ms. Dortch?
Through to His Worship, there is really no significance. Obviously, if it does get to a Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, there may be some discussion on the draft secondary plan that was being undertaken at that time. But again, the board member will give it the weight that is due because it wasn't a formal pass document. But it's what was in place the day the application was made.
So had a secondary plan for Crystal Beach been in place prior to that application being made, that secondary plan would have been applicable. Is that correct?
Yeah, through to His Worship, that's correct.
And had there been density targets in that secondary plan with respect to this particular parcel, those would have been the density targets that would have guided planning staff in processing that application. Is that correct?
Ms. Dortch?
Through His Worship, that's correct. In addition to obviously the policy you just referenced in 4.226 A Roman numeral 2. When we consider those policies would have also been considered as part of that in the application, if it for medium or high density.
So I think, Madam Chair, I'm finished asking questions. I think I just want to put forward my thoughts. I first of all want to acknowledge that I and other members of council have received a number of email messages from a variety of people in Crystal Beach expressing great anxiety about the secondary plan and a development that we have not really even seen yet, because as I understand it, it hasn't been formally put forth for purposes of a public meeting, which will be an opportunity for the public to speak. Unfortunately, the planners are bound by the current planning documents, the current official plan, provincial policy statement, growth plan, zoning bylaw, et cetera, in dealing with that proposal, which isn't before us today. What's before us today is the official plan amendment, the Crystal Beach secondary plan, which has gone through a lengthy process. And insofar as it started in February 2018, we weren't all on board for the entire journey, but most of us have been on board since February of 2018. We've been on board this journey. We were with this journey on June the 22nd when the public meeting was held this year, and we had report PDS 47 before us in June of 2021, and we had report PDS 86 2021 on September the 13th, 2021, when we approved the secondary plan to go forward to the bylaw stage. In PDS 47, there was specific reference to the change in density that was being recommended for this and I think 5 other properties, specifically referred to in the report. Plain as day, and so it was there. And the public may not have liked it and may not have tuned into it, and I happen to believe that the public, and even maybe me, didn't fully appreciate the significance of 50 to 100 units per hectare. I think that's the challenge here, is that I don't think the public at large understands what that means. How many units you can actually get into a hectare if people know what a hectare is. So that to some extent we're speaking a language that the public may not be necessarily speaking. It doesn't mean that we're trying to bamboozle or fool anyone. It just means that that's something maybe that we need to be a bit more sensitive to. But to me, that's part of the reality here. We also don't think that density has anything, or there's been comments that density doesn't really have anything to do with affordability. I think we all believe that it does. I think we all understand that the more units you can get onto a piece of land, the further the cost can be spread out by the builder, and hopefully the cheaper the unit will be, whether it's a townhouse, an apartment, a duplex, or a single-family dwelling, a tiny home. So those are all the things that we're trying to deal with. I'm most concerned about the fact that because, and this has been the one aspect of this secondary plan that has now been really brought to the attention of council. I've tried to respond to each and every one of the emails that we received. I just ran out of time today. I know that there were a number of emails that came in this morning that I got to, and then I've been busy all day. I just haven't been able to respond to them. I want everybody that sent an email to us to recognize that we're getting the emails. We're doing the best that we can to try to deal with this issue. I don't happen to believe, as a point of philosophy, that if somebody misses something, that it's too bad, so sad, we just keep moving on. I think that if we've recognized something that we've failed to to take into account. If as an example, I missed the significance of 50 to 100 hectares or units per hectare as medium density for this parcel of land, I don't think the best way forward is to just say, well, I made a mistake there, let's just keep moving forward. I think the prudent thing to do is to try to address that problem. I don't believe for a minute that that is a site that that type of density should be applicable to for a variety of reasons, particularly the fact that it's got a very narrow entrance into the parcel. It's not a large frontage. So my view is that if there's been an error, we should try to correct that. The one challenge that I've got is most of the emails we received, if not all but one, have suggested that we should take this out of the secondary plan and have some further consultation. I don't know about that. We did receive a contrary view that basically said we shouldn't mess with this provision of 50 to 100. I happen to believe, among other things, that we need to take a look at the growth. I've indicated, and I've stated many times, that for me, the biggest challenge for this council at a time like the last several years that we've been going through is how do we manage growth? And to me, the one important thing is people that grew up here have certain things that they love about this community. People that move here because they love certain things about this community. If we don't recognize that, if we don't try to protect our natural heritage, protect our neighborhoods, protect the things that people value about this community, then really, why are we here? What's the sense in the growth? So I think the biggest challenge to us is how do we manage this growth? I think that it's important that in core mixed-use areas, we try to have greater density. We backed off greater density on Erie Road because people were telling us that it didn't really fit the neighborhood. I think we back off 50 to 100 hectares on this particular parcel on Rebstock because I don't think it fits the neighborhood. I think 25 to 50 is typical of some of the other parts of the community that might look like this. I see high rises on Jarvis Street. I think one of the councillors mentioned that at the last meeting. Might have been Councillor Noyes or Councillor Butler, I'm not sure. I see that. I see apartment buildings in other parts of Fort Erie. They will pick up some of the density that will allow us to have single-family dwellings in other places, in townhouses and other places. But I think trying to put 154 units on this parcel, to me that changes the neighborhood far too much, and it doesn't really reflect well. I don't believe that we're going to satisfy. I mean, we might be able to make everybody unhappy. That isn't our function. But I did want to say that as I was reading this weekend something other than council material or regional material or law material, I started reading a book, and the foreword to the book is from Murray Sinclair, the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, former senator, a very well-respected elder in the Indigenous community. And it starts this way. I was once asked by a young Indigenous person for advice about something they were thinking about doing, running for council in their home community. I sensed that they wanted to know what they should think about before making that decision. I said this: if you want to be a good leader, you have to love the people. You have to be willing to speak with a strong voice about what they need and want, and you have to do it with courage. You have to strive to understand what they are trying to tell you so you can be their voice. You have to be willing to help them understand why some things they seek cannot be achieved. You must understand that you can only lead from the front and not from the rear. If you want to be a good leader, you have to love the people. And I happen to believe that this is a council made up of individuals who love the people that we serve. We may not make the decisions that Solomon would have made. We may not be that wise, but I don't think anyone in the public should ever doubt that the decisions that we're making, we believe best serve our community. And that's our job, is to serve the community, do the best that we can for the community, and try to make sure that we manage growth so that we don't change this place that we love into something that we don't want, the people who live here don't want, and the people who may eventually move here someday wouldn't recognize. We can do that, but it takes a lot of time and effort and energy, and we have to keep paying attention. I mean, the reality is we have to keep paying attention, and sometimes that's hard. So all of this to say that if Councillor Noyes were to move to reduce the density of Section 422.9.9, the Rebstock Road property, to 25 to 50, I would support that. It's not what the residents want, but I believe that it puts the residents in a better position going forward, particularly because it does set out what we believe to be a reasonable level of development and intensity of development on that site. It might be too much for some of the residents, maybe all of the residents, I don't know. Certainly isn't going to be enough for a developer. They think it should be higher. But I have to do what I think is right, and I'm doing it because I love the community and I love the people in the community. They may not agree with me. I'm just telling you what I'm thinking, what's in my head. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can't actually see people's hands up in the chambers. I can see Councillor Lubberts' hand, but I'm not sure if Councillor McDermott wanted to speak on this before I go back to Councillor Lubberts.
Councillor Dubanow had his hand up before.
Okay, but I know Councillor McDermott hasn't spoken yet, so I just wanted to make sure he wasn't wanting to speak.
No, I'm good right now.
Okay, so I'll go to Councillor Lubberts and then Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to go back to what Ms. Dolch said earlier about cautioning council because we've gone too far into the process. And I can agree if you get too far into a process that you don't want to stop or abandon the process. But I don't think you're ever too far into the process to recognize that you got to take a step back and clean a few things up. And I just get into density and affordability. When I look at 100 units per hectare, and then I look at, Councillor Butler's motion about, and it talks about the affordable housing strategy. If we put 100 units per hectare, a blanket 100 units per hectare, that takes away our leverage when we want to have an affordable housing strategy. So if you have in your bylaw 25 to 50, and then in certain circumstances we will allow a greater density, provided that the developer agrees to put more affordable housing in the subdivision. Now we have a little leverage. But right now, you have no leverage at 100 units per hectare. The developer comes in and all you can do is hope that he puts some affordable housing in that development. Otherwise, you have some ability. And to take out and change the density for this property in this report, I mean, Ms. Dolch has made it quite clear that this development that's going on is based on our official plan. So there is no limits in the official plan. So it wouldn't hurt anything to put this at 25 to 50 units. Because when LPAT is done with you, you're going to end up with probably 111 units per hectare, because it sounds to me like everybody's resigned to the fact that developer's going to get what he wants. But when Mayor Redekop says that you got to love your people and love your community, yeah, he's right. But you also have to fight for them too. And I don't think that I'm willing to stand back and do nothing. I'm willing to fight for what the community wants. This is what the people have spoken. They have cried out to us to let us know that they don't agree with this. And yes, we got to make tough decisions. There are no simple solutions to complex issues. Everybody knows that. But we can't just sit back and throw our hands in the air and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Because as far as I'm concerned, this developer has no concerns about this community. He has no regard as to what is good for the community. He's coming in here, he's going to build his units, and then he's going to leave. And I don't think that we should sit back and just let it happen. We know what's right. We know what's fair. We know what's compatible.
Point of order, Madam Chair. We need to move to extend the time because we're at 10 o'clock. So I'd be happy to move that we continue for another 45 minutes.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Go ahead, Councillor Lubberts.
I have another point of order, Madam Chair.
Okay.
We're not dealing with the development tonight. What we're dealing with is the official plan amendment by the secondary plan. Just to
yeah, I get that, Mayor Redekop, but I think there was a lot of people that talked about the development tonight.
Well,
I understand what you're saying, and I'm talking about this here portion of the motion. This portion of the motion just happened to have a development attached to it. But I'll move on from there. The 50 to 100 units per hectare, and we're talking about, Mayor Redekop, and you brought it up, when we started this process with medium density. I'm sitting here right now in my place, and I'm looking at a secondary plan document that was sent to me by our town staff, right? And it's titled Secondary Plan, Crystal Beach Secondary Plan. And when I go back into the document and look at the properties of the document, it's dated May 5th, 2021. Crystal Beach Secondary Plan, final PDF. So we made our decisions. We had a final PDF version of our secondary plan. And at that time, May 5th of this year, medium density was 25 to 50 units per hectare. So somewhere between May 5th and today, things changed. On May 5th, we had all the properties lined up. We had all the densities, because it clearly says in this document that even when they took the units away from Erie and Derby Road, they allocated them elsewhere in the town, and they set up this year plan with 25 to 50 units per hectare. So there's no reason to increase the density from 25 to 50 to 50 to 100. There's no reason for it. This document here proves it. It was there. It was already set up. It was already in place. All the changes had been taking place. It talks about how they found other lands in other areas, other blocks of land to move the density other places. So I'm not going to support this here report because it's got 100 units per hectare in other areas, it takes away our leverage, and it takes away what was previously on May 5th, a final version of what our official plan or our secondary plan was going to be. The rev stock property, I understand what Kira Dolce and the mayor's talking about. We've gone through this over and over again, and the limits and the intensification or that you're going to put on that property. Maybe we don't have any control over it, but that doesn't mean that we sit back. So I'm not going to support the report as long as there's 100 units per hectare. Other parts of the report, I'm fine with. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against, intensifying in density. I'm not against that. I get it. But I get other areas where they say, this is what our density is. This is how we identify it. This is the definitions of our densities. I'm looking at our secondary plan now, and it says in there, medium high density. That's the definition that you get. So now medium density and high density fall under the same category. I can't live with that. We have to have a definition of medium density. We have to have a definition of high density. It's not there. High density, wherever I looked and did my research, did my due diligence on this here issue, high density was 100 units per hectare. That's high density in other municipalities. We're going to lose out if we allow 100 units per hectare. And it's not too late. It's too late to abandon the secondary plan because we can't abandon it. But it's not too late to stop. It's not too late to take a pause and say, okay, let's review this a little bit. Let's take a look and see if we can find some properties and pick up some density somewhere else. I'm sure we can do it. And I'm sure that the public out there isn't going to mind if they have to go to another public meeting to get what they want. I just don't believe that they're going to be upset about it. Nobody's going to be upset. There's no time frame for us. We don't have to have this done by a certain day. When we did our neighborhood plan back in 2003, we were told in Crystal Beach that the secondary plan would follow. This is 20 years later almost, and we're finally getting it. And now all of a sudden there's an urgency that we have to get this done now. There's no urgency at all. We can pause. And if we don't pause, I can't support it. If we vote on 100 units per hectare in this here report here, you might as well just give them the secondary plan, because you can't make any changes in the secondary plan. That's all I got to say. I'm sorry, I can't support it.
Okay, Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just to touch on the issue of urgency, I'm sure the business owners on Erie Road who are looking to invest in our community would be looking to have a community improvement plan sometime this century, but I digress. I want to extend my appreciation to Mayor Redekop for his comments that he made a moment ago. It certainly gave me pause, and I really appreciate the passage he read from Murray Sinclair. You absolutely do need to love your community and love the people who live here to do this. And the challenge for me, being a new councillor who's now in his third year, with all the curveballs that have been thrown my way, is learning to effectively describe what Murray Sinclair did, where, sometimes what an individual may want is not necessarily the right thing for a community, and that's always a challenge. And the mayor did mention a good point about the issue of compromise. We're not ever going to make everyone happy with every decision we make. We do our best. We all love our community, and we all want to see it thrive, and we want to see the community that we love, progress in a way that we continue to love. If a member of council were to move an amendment to reduce the density on this specific property, I'd be inclined to entertain it, but I do have one question, Madam Chair, for Ms. Dolch, and I'm just wondering what impact this would have on the targets. I understand we're talking about this one specific property, and it may not be that big of an issue, and certainly we might be able to pick that up perhaps on the Garrison Road corridor or other areas that are kind of a mixed commercial that we're starting to see right now. So I personally don't think it would be that big of a deal. But with all the work that staff have put into this secondary plan and the public consultation and everything else, I just, for my own benefit and to ensure that I'm making a good decision, I'm just wondering if Ms. Dolch could perhaps just touch on that. If we did reduce the density from 50 to 100 and capped it at 50, would there be any detrimental impact? I don't want to see this whole thing that we've been working on for so long blow up. And I'm just wondering if she could perhaps comment on that.
Ms. Dolch? Through to the councillor. That's a very good question. So obviously, and I'll get Mr. Wasserman to provide some commentary as well. But my understanding is we did look at this particular property and reducing it from 100 to 75. I think we lost 35 units. So decreasing it from 75 to 50, it would be 70 units. That being said, obviously we have to pick it up elsewhere. I also just need to caution you on the possibility of appeal. I don't know if there will be an appeal on that portion because of density. Obviously I think it can be picked up, you can pick it up in other communities, but that doesn't mean that I can speak for the region. So the region was granting us delegated authority on this approval. They may have some concerns. Well, I will caution on that note, but other than that, that's what you'd need to pick up is 70 units. And I'll just ask Mr. Wasserman to confirm that because he did do the calculation, so I don't want to misquote.
Yes, so through you to Ms. Dolch. That is correct. I think the numbers were as mentioned, and we would have to try and find that kind of density somewhere else. Yeah, that's basically the situation, and so yeah. Thank you.
And if I may continue, Madam Chair. So we're talking 70 units. So that would essentially be, I'm trying to think here just for a point of context, if we're doing this somewhere else, I believe just going into my own neighborhood of town in Ward 2, Albany Place is 100 units. I believe the High Street apartments are 60 units. Trying to think here. The one on Concession, I believe, is in the 60 unit range. Councillor Noyes, she sits on the board, so she's nodding, so I think I'm correct. And I think the one on King Street is around 50. Okay, so that's 60 as well. So that gives us a point of context of where we need to replace this. If certainly looking at Rebstock Road, it's a single family neighborhood. We may be able to locate some of that density on some of our more heavily traveled corridors that wouldn't be as impactful. I know we're always, looking at our housing study, getting those type of multifamily units has been a challenge. I'd like to hear, at this point, I'm willing to at least consider supporting an amendment on that. I'm open more to hearing from what other members of council say. This is an easy job that we sign up for. There's a certain level of truth to that, and this has been one of the more challenging issues. And I appreciate everyone in the community who's reached out and offered comment. We do our best, and that's why I'm glad we're having this discussion here right now. So, Madam Chair, I think I've got the information I need. Thank you.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. I'm not going to repeat the words that the mayor had, or Councillor Dubanow, or Mr. Lubberts, or Councillor Lubberts had. I do feel that we do need to look at the density. I will be putting forth a motion to decrease it from the 50 to 100 to 25 to 50. And I think that the public has made us very aware of what they want in this area, or at least what they don't want in this area. And I think it would be much more compatible with the community. So I'm not going to repeat what I said last week, and I'm going to then maybe need some guidance here. Do I move that? Do I move something to amend it from 50 to 100, number 4.22.9.4, that the density be reduced to 25 to 50 on that property?
Madam Clerk, is that how we proceed?
Yes, she just identified the correct section.
Okay. That amendment's on the floor. Any comments or questions? Your Worship?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, as a matter of procedure, Ms. Dolce had brought to my attention Section 34, sub 17 of the Planning Act, and whether or not there's a need to pass some type of resolution beforehand, that we don't need to have a further public meeting to make this amendment. And maybe we could just get some clarification from Ms. Dolce. I don't think it specifically applies to the bylaw, but she did express a concern.
Ms. Dolce?
His Worship, that's correct. 3417 of the Act is part of the zoning bylaw. So should you change anything in the zoning bylaw, you would need to do that. Under Section 17 of the Act, you do not require that notice.
Mayor Redekop?
No, that's good, and I just needed a clarification. I thought Councillor Noyes mentioned 4.22.9.94. I don't have a subsection 4. I have B. It's B. So 422.9.9B. No, it's 9.
Did we lose Mayor Redekop?
No, Mayor Redekop, you still have the floor.
I'm sorry, I'm done. I just wanted that clarification.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much. Going back to change it to what happens with the other report when it comes to this section? Does that get followed up with this? I'm just wondering how staff or how we're gonna work that.
Ms. Dolch? To the councillor, do you mean, when you mean the other report, do you mean the bylaw for the zoning? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, because that property is mentioned in the zoning as well, right? So are we have an understanding that it's gonna follow that as well?
No, it's going to have to be dealt with directly.
Okay, all right. And then, just on the motion itself, to amend it back, if we go forward with this 50 to 100 units, or move it back to 25 to 50, I do know that, and I spoke with, I sent an email anyway to Ms. Dolch and her staff. There's a property that I know was just sold. It closes in January, and I know the developer bought it, so they will definitely be putting in an application for urban boundary expansion, and it'll be big enough to house what we're losing on it'll probably be big enough to accommodate the units that will require. I think staff can look into that, and I'm sure if they talk to the region will understand that when their deal goes all the way through and it's finished, that we can have it zoned so that's medium density is included. So there's a block of land that we can use to make up for the density. But I find it puzzling that we can find a piece of property that quick, but we can't find other pieces of property. I just can't believe that we can't do that. And when it comes to pausing, and I understand the business owners down on Erie and Derby Road that they want their CPI, but this is for all of Crystal Beach, not just for a certain area of Crystal Beach. This is for everybody. And they have been patiently waiting. They waited 20 years almost for the secondary plan. They're not going to worry that they had to wait another couple months. It's not going to hurt them one little bit. So I still think we should pause, but I'll support this here motion. But I can't support 100 units per hectare on any other lands. I just can't do it.
Anything further, Councillor Lubberts?
That's all.
And I don't see any other hands up, but I can only see Mayor Redekop right now. So maybe Mayor Redekop.
There aren't any other hands up.
Okay, so we will call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? And I cannot see the other count.
Everybody's hand is up.
Okay, so that passes. So now we're back to the original motion as amended. Are we ready to call the question on that as well? All in favor?
I'd like a recorded vote on this.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Lubberts.
No.
Councillor McDermott.
Yes.
Councillor Zanko.
Yes.
Councillor Butler.
Yes.
Councillor Dubanow.
Yes.
Councillor Noyes.
Yes.
Mayor Redekop.
Yes.
The vote carries.
And I will hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zanko. I very much appreciate it. That takes us to, let's see. So now we're on first and second reading for bylaw number 144. Councillor Lubberts, if you'd be good enough.
Yeah, I got to find my resolution here.
Number 16.
Yeah, I move by myself, a second by Councillor McDermott, that bylaw number 144 2021 to amend zoning bylaw number 12990 to implement official plan amendment number 56, being the Crystal Beach secondary plan, and given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That bylaw is on the floor for questions or comments, and that is the zoning bylaw. The page that would deal with this particular Revstock Road property is on pages 7 and 8. It's RM1 684. Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, I'd like to amend this report, and basically it's the RM1-684, the Revstock Road east of Crystal Ridge Park, that under B, minimum site density for all combined unit types shall be 25 units, and C, maximum site density for all combined unit types shall be 100 units per hectare.
Thank you. Did you want to speak to that?
I think
You've said enough, and I've said more than enough.
I think we're just really, just following up with the last report.
Councillor Lubberts, you're up.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. On page 11 of the report.
Okay, we have an amendment on the floor. We need to deal with the amendment. Is this to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah.
Anyone to the amendment?
Your worship,
Sorry,
as to procedure, there is the
need a second.
the resolution that council determines that in accordance with section 3417 of the Planning Act, further notice is not required.
Okay.
Result of the changes made to the proposed bylaw per Ms.
Right.
Dolch's memo.
Yes. So, just to be clear, we're not sure whether this applies to the bylaw, but as a precaution, Councillor, or Ms. Dolch, you're believing that we should pass this resolution. Council determines that in accordance with section 3417 of the Planning Act, further notice is not required, etc.
Your worship, that's correct, because 34 deals with the zoning.
Yep.
Previously, for the official plan amendment, you didn't need to pass it because it was under section 17, but now you're with the zoning in section 34, so it is required.
Okay, so before we deal with your motion to amend, Councillor Noyes, Councillor Dubanow, you're going to move that council determines that in accordance with section 3417 of the Planning Act, further notice is not required as a result of the changes made to the proposed zoning bylaw.
Yeah, I'll move that, Your Worship.
So just as a matter of, how do we know what the changes are going to be? Shouldn't we deal with this after we make the amendments? I think we should make it after we make the amendments, because it says as a result of the changes made to the proposed bylaw. So I think we're going to hold that till we're done making whatever changes we want to make. Councillor Noyes, do we have a seconder for your motion to amend? Councillor McDermott? Okay, so that motion to amend RM1 684 subsections B and C is on the floor. If there are no further questions or comments, all those in favor, this changes the density. Is your hand up, Councillor Lubberts, or are you asking a question?
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, yay.
Okay. Councillor Noyes, you still have the floor. Anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. On page 11 of the report, they got, I think it's dealing with the lands west of intersection at Ryan and Graber. F. Regulations for stacked townhouses, same as paragraph E herein. So when you look, I'm assuming you would go above that to E, and there's a maximum building height of 2 stories for E. But E is block townhouses. So if you have stacked townhouses, would you not have more than 2 stories?
Ms. Dolch, I think that makes sense.
Sorry, and can I, page 11, sorry, I was looking at the
page
bottom.
11
Yeah,
of the
page
bylaw.
11.
Thank you. I was looking at the bottom page numbers, so I couldn't find 11, but I saw that.
Oh, it's on the top.
Apologize. Okay, so in turn, you were looking at E.
E and F.
Yes, so the regulations, those refer to the regulations for block and stack townhouses, so both are permitted uses.
Yeah, but the block townhouses, the height is 2 stories, and then F, stacked townhouses, is the same as E, but if you stack a townhouse, you'd have more than 2 stories, wouldn't you?
No, not necessarily, Councillor Lubberts, no. And I can just, if I can, with Mr. Wasserman, whether or not I believe your intention was to have 2 stories on that site, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, okay, so those could potentially be 2-story stacked townhouses, which simply means one owner on the first floor and a different owner on the second floor, each with an access to the street.
That's correct.
Councillor Lubberts?
Okay, all right, and then just below that, on the same page, Crystal Beach Tennis and Yacht Club, the property there along Erie Road. I've always been the understanding that we require 1.5 parking spaces per unit when we're dealing with development. And here on D9, it only requires 1 space per unit. And again, we all know the problems that we have in Crystal Beach with parking now. And you're going to be putting block townhouses on this property. And we all know that there's going to be visitors. And if there's only 1 parking space per unit, the visitors are going to be looking for street parking. And the restaurant customers are having a hard time finding parking space to get to a restaurant. And here we are creating a parking problem on top of a parking problem that we already have. And now it's going to get bigger. I don't know how many units this piece of property is going to hold. But Mr. Wasserman, you have that?
Mr. Wasserman, can you comment on the reason for 1 space per unit, 1 parking space?
Through you to the councillor. Sorry, excuse me. No, actually, that has not changed in the plan. That portion has not changed since I think Mr. Miller is working on it. So, yeah, I don't know if Kira, if you know any further history regarding that lot.
Ms. Dolitz, the explanation for why 1 as opposed to 1 plus something?
Thank you. Through you to the councillor. So in terms of 1 parking space per unit, it's similar to the core mixed use zones in that area. They only require 1 space. Obviously, it's close to the core. The amenities are there. There is the possibility to reduce some parking. The parking study didn't show a parking problem. I know there's definitely a perceived parking problem, depending on where you park, and how close to the beach and things like that for access. And you can see from some other applications that we have in core mixed use that have just come forward, obviously if they feel they need more parking, they will provide it for their customers. But we didn't feel anything more than 1 space per unit is needed, just given the proximity to the core of Crystal Beach in this location.
Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much. And the reason I bring that up as well is when you look at the property at Revstock Road, there was a traffic study done on that property and that development as well. And that's what the conclusion to their parking study has indicated, that one parking space per unit will be sufficient. So if we go back to them and try to get them to make it more than one, we're in trouble here, because we've already set the standard for Crystal Beach. And now we're at one parking space per unit. If we allow it here, LPAT's going to tell you got to allow it over there. And that, to me, one of the biggest concerns about that development is, this parking. Every inch of that property that's paved is a parking space. And here we go. We're shooting ourselves right in the foot here.
Ms. Dolch, any comments on that?
Earlier to the councillor. So the only thing I'll mention is each property is based on its own merits. So it depends when you assess a development application and you're reducing parking, that analysis is done based on that site. Just because you may modify it in one location doesn't necessarily mean it should be amended in another. It depends on the merit of the site. Obviously, is it close to transit? Is it close to core? So those are factors that have to be considered when you're analyzing parking. Obviously, if it was somewhere in the middle of an area where it wasn't close to the core or transit, that's something you may not consider reducing. But every site's based on its site-specific nature and the request that's being brought forward. It doesn't set precedents. It's just something you have to consider based on the context of that area.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you.
Anything further?
I think that's it. I think that's everything there.
Okay. Any other members of council with respect to the zoning bylaw? So we have an amendment. I'm going to then ask for third and final reading of Bylaw 144 as amended. That is Councillor Zanko.
I don't have that resolution.
Third and final reading. Oh, is this the one that I read before? Yes. So, Councillor Zanko, you've been dealing with the bylaw package up until now. So, for third and final, so did we do third and final reading of the zoning bylaw? The official plan. What was the recorded vote on?
First and second reading.
Okay. So we're going to do, we'll do third and final reading for bylaw 143 as amended. That's the official plan. So Councillor Zanko, are you prepared to move that? And Councillor Butler, are you prepared to second third and final reading for bylaw 143, 2021 as amended?
Yes.
To be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the secondary plan, official plan amendment? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, now Councillor Zanko, would you do the third and final reading for bylaw 144, 2021, seconded hopefully by Councillor Butler? And to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal. So that's the amended bylaw 144, third and final reading. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And then you have a conflict with respect to bylaw 146, Councillor Zanko, so I'll ask Councillor, sorry, you have first and second reading.
I'm sorry, Mayor Redekop, I think we need Councillor Dubanow's now about the resolution to waive for the public meeting.
Yes. Good catch. Councillor Dubanow. Takes a village.
Yes, Your Worship, I will move that right now. I think now would be the appropriate time. I'll read this. I'd like to move that Council determines that in accordance with Section 3417 of the Planning Act, further notice is not required as the result of the changes made to the proposed bylaw.
And we have a seconder for that? Councillor Noyes? Are there any questions or comments with respect to that resolution? If none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Okay. Third and final, so now we go to Bylaw 146, 2021. Councillor Lubberts, could you do first and second reading for that bylaw, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott, the bylaw 146, 2021 to amend zoning bylaw number 12990 as amended, 3399 North Shore Drive, Upper Canada Consultants Planning and Engineering Limited, Matt Kernahan, agent, Sider Brother Builders, Sean Sider, and Paul Phillip and Susanna Phillip, owners, is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That bylaw is on the floor for any questions or comments. If there are none, then Councillor Zanko, Councillor McDermott, could I get you to move third and final reading of bylaw number 146, 2021 to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal? And Councillor Butler, would you second that as well? Thank you. Are there any questions or comments with respect to bylaw 146?
Yeah, I got a recorded vote, thanks.
Sure. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Lubberts?
No.
Councillor McDermott?
Yes.
Councillor Zanko?
She has a con.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Butler?
Yes.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yes.
Councillor Noyes?
Yes.
And Mayor Redekop?
Yes.
The vote carries.
Okay, then that was easy. That takes us to back to you, Councillor Lubberts, with first and second reading for the confirmatory bylaw.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I'll need a seconder.
Councillor McDermott.
Councillor McDermott, thank you. Moved by myself, second by Councillor McDermott, that bylaw number 147-2021 to confirm the actions of council at its council and committee meetings held on November 8, 2021, on November 15, 2021, council and budget committee meeting number 1 held on November 17, 2021, and its special and council meetings held on November 22, 2021 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Zanko, do you have resolution number 19 by any chance?
Yes, I do. I have this. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaw number 147-2021 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Scheduling of meetings. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So this week on Tuesday, November 23rd at 5 p.m., we have a Community Healthcare Services Committee meeting. And then the following week on Wednesday, December 1st, we're already into December, at 5 p.m., we have a Planning and Development Services meeting.
Anyone else? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Wednesday, 3 o'clock, we have an infrastructure meeting at the Town Hall, Conference Room 2. Kelly?
3.
3.
And the time?
3 o'clock, Wednesday.
So that's November 24th. Any other meetings that anyone wishes to announce? Then Councillor Dubanow, you have the resolution to adjourn.
Yes, I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that council adjourns at 10:43 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on December 13th, 2021.
All those in favor? Thank you very much, everyone.